Chapter 193. A servant quietly walked over and gently parted the tassels. After Chu Yang went in, he gently put them down and quietly left. From beginning to end, he did not make a single sound. Chu Yang went in and was stunned. In front of him there was a soft chair. On top of it there was a person leaning against it. Calling it a person was a bit of a stretch. It would be better to call it a skeleton. This person's entire body, excluding the bones, did not weigh more than half a pound. It could be said that it was a layer of wrinkled human skin stuck on top of a skeleton. On his face there was not the slightest trace of blood. The only thing that had a bit of light was a pair of muddy eyes that were still flashing with the light of life. It was only when he opened his eyes that people could feel that he was still alive. There was a dark aura that belonged to the dead faintly emitted from this person who was still alive. He was wearing a bright yellow robe. This kind of noble robe could not hide the aura of this person. At this moment his eyes were trying hard to look at Chu Yang. Chu Yang couldn't imagine how a person whose body had already reached such a level could sit up, even though he was just lying down. "You are Chu Yang?" This person's voice was very low. If one was not careful, one would not be able to hear it. However, the only fortunate thing was that although his words were vague, they could still be understood. Tai Butian was standing behind him with one hand on this person's shoulder. Tears were flowing as if they would fall at any moment. This person was the ruler of Iron Cloud Nation, Tai Shicheng, Tai Butian's biological father. He had been in a coma for a long time. Every time he was in a coma for more than 20 hours, but every time he woke up, it would not be more than 15 minutes. The most tragic thing was that every time he woke up, his mind would be absolutely clear. For a person with a body like this was the greatest torture. It was not as easy as being in a complete state of confusion. However, when he woke up this time and heard that Du Shiqing was missing, this ruler immediately urged Tai Butian to give him Dragon Spirit Incense. Dragon Spirit Incense was also called soul-returning incense. It could make a person on the verge of death appear extremely excited for a period of time. He supported a dying person to finish what he wanted to say, and finish what he wanted to do the most. However, this period of time was very short. Once this period of time passed, the soul flame would be completely extinguished. He was completely dead. "Yes," Chu Yang replied softly. He really didn't dare to speak forcefully. No matter how strong this monarch was, it felt as if he wouldn't be able to withstand the vibrations in the air. "And no need to be so polite." Tai Shicheng's eyes moved slightly. "Come closer. Let me take a look. You're standing so far away I can't see your face clearly." Chu Yang agreed and took a few steps forward. He was only 5 steps away from Tai Shicheng, but he couldn't see him clearly. This monarch's eyesight was more or less the same. "Not bad, you are indeed talented." Tai Shicheng smiled. It would have been better if he didn't smile. Now that he did, it was as terrifying as a malicious spirit. "Your Majesty is too kind. Butian often talks about you in front of me." "Aha, he thinks I can't hear him. In fact, I can hear everything." Tai Shicheng's smile had a hint of pride. He sighed and said, "Today is the most relaxed day I've had in 10 years. Behind him, Tai Butian's face clearly reddened and then became pale. "In this period of time I know everything you've done." Tai Shicheng's eyes gradually brightened. Slowly they became sharp. The aura of a monarch slowly spread out from his body and soul. This was the result of the dragon spirit fragrance gradually taking effect in his body. "You have done very well." Tai Shicheng's sharp eyes looked at Chu Yang and slowly said, "I have told Butian many times that as a monarch, he must be ruthless. When it is time to kill, even if it is his own father or daughter, he must kill. There is nothing that cannot be sacrificed. This is the path of a monarch. The path of a monarch is a lonely one with many vicissitudes. However, he has always been somewhat indecisive on this point. Being a monarch is much more tiring than being a normal person. Some people you know should not be killed, but you still have to kill. Some people you can't bear to kill, but you still have to kill. Some things you know are wrong, but you still have to do. Because as a monarch, you have to bear all of this by yourself." Even though Tai Shicheng was looking at Chu Yang, these words did not seem to be directed to Chu Yang, but to Tai Butian. A monarch must think about the world, not himself, and definitely not his family. This is the sorrow of a monarch. Who in this world does not have feelings? A monarch also has feelings, but he cannot have them. Therefore, every monarch's heart is lonely, and also pitiful and sad. Every monarch's heart has countless debts of conscience. Day and night they torture themselves. Therefore, for generations the lifespan of a monarch is not. Tai Shi sighed. It was not known what he was thinking, but his eyes flashed with extreme regret and sorrow. Chu Yang did not know what to say to this dying monarch. He could only remain silent and not say a word. I ascended the throne at the age of 18. In a few years I trained my soldiers and trained my horses. Looking at all the heroes in the world, no one could compare. This was the result of conquering the south and conquering the north. Just the sight of the wind swept away by the iron hooves. In just 5 years, I expanded Ironcloud's territory by 1/3. At that time I was full of ambition. I always felt that the world was in my hands, and this world would eventually be unified by me. Ironcloud was stabilized. Great Zhao realized the threat of Ironcloud and sent troops to attack. At that time I was in the prime of my life and full of ambition. The sharpness of Ironcloud's armors was unparalleled in the world. Even though Great Zhao had Di Wuqing Rou, it was difficult for them to resist the strength of my armors. At that time, Ironcloud's army of 500,000 was 400 miles long. They faced Great Zhao's army of 400,000 at Twin Dragon Mountain. I had absolute confidence that I could defeat Di Wuqing Rou's army in one fell swoop. Then, with an unstoppable momentum, I would enter the hinterland of Great Zhao. After destroying Great Zhao, I would use the power of thunder to swallow limitless nation. I would complete the dominion of lower 3 heavens. Tai Shi voice slowly turned from hoarse to impassioned. His face also gradually turned red. His eyes suddenly became domineering and awe-inspiring. It was as if he was recalling the days when he led millions of soldiers to conquer the world. However, at the beginning of the decisive battle, we were suddenly attacked by suicide soldiers. 30 revered martial artists sneaked into the camp and tried to assassinate me. However, this was not enough. There was also a mysterious archer who shot an arrow at me from 100 feet away. Tai Shi eyes revealed a powerless hatred. It was that arrow that dragged my life from the peak to hell. The poison on the arrow had no antidote. In that battle, without a leader, the army was defeated. I retreated back to Ironcloud Citadel like a turtle and lingered on my last breath until today. Tai Shi voice gradually became low. 10 years ago I should have died. Only now did I die. I really made them wait for too long. Tai Shi sighed and closed his eyes. 2 streams of tears quietly rolled down his face. Chu Yang quietly said, "Your Majesty, do you have any unfinished business? Right now, to say things like Your Majesty's body is in good health and you can relax your heart, is not only inappropriate, but also stupid." Chu Yang knew that if Tai Shi wanted to see him, it was not just to say a few words. If he wanted to say something, there were so many officials he could say it to. Why did he have to say it to someone he met for the first time? Unfinished business. There are too many. Too much, ah. Tai Shi body suddenly trembled. His voice was filled with extreme disappointment and regret that his ambition had not been fulfilled. Unfinished business is Ironcloud. Tai Shi sighed. Tai Shi sighed and suddenly asked, "Minister Chu, as a dying man, I ask you to stay in Ironcloud. Is that possible?" Chu Yang was startled and raised his head to look at him. Butian, this child, has the heart and temperament to be a king. He has plenty of strategy but not enough ruthlessness. Tai Shi skeletal eyes looked deeply at Chu Yang. Minister Chu is decisive and efficient. You can perfectly make up for Butian's lack of ruthlessness. The two of you together are a pair made by the heavens. Tai Shi's voice was a little strange. "I am very sorry, but I cannot stay." Chu Yang was silent for a while before replying apologetically. "If you stay, I can make the decision to betroth my only daughter to you." Tai Shi stared at Chu Yang and said, "Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. You marry my daughter, and from then on you will be the regent of Ironcloud Nation. You will have absolute power, and you will be at the pinnacle of power." Behind him, Tai Butian lowered his head. He gently bit his lips and said, "Father, Minister Chu, your daughter is the #1 beauty of Ironcloud Nation." Tai Shi did not pay attention to Tai Butian. He only looked at Chu Yang. She will have the pinnacle of power and wealth as her dowry. Are you willing to stay? The number one beauty, the pinnacle of power, and the riches and honor of the nation. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. This is indeed an irresistible temptation. It's not small. But this Chu's heart belongs to someone else. Moreover, my lifelong ambition is not to stay in the lower three heavens. Chu Yang smiled. Your Majesty's good intentions. I can only thank you in my heart. Tai Shicheng's sunken eyes suddenly shot out two sharp rays of light. After a long time he said weakly, Good. Good. You are indeed king of Hell Chu. He coughed twice and said casually, Minister Chu, I want to ask you something. You must answer truthfully. Chapter 194. Chu Yang pondered for a moment. After weighing the pros and cons in his heart for a long time, he said, I know about Mr. Du's disappearance. Tai Butian's countenance changed drastically. He had already had this guess and premonition in his heart a long time ago. But now that Chu Yang had personally said that he knew, it still shook him to his core. Tai Shicheng, on the other hand, smiled with satisfaction and said, Only knowing? Chu Yang was silent for a while and said, I only know. I also did not think that Senior Du would disappear so quickly or so coincidentally. In the end, Chu Yang still chose to keep it a secret. Oh. Senior Du said that staying in Iron Cloud is his greatest danger. Chu Yang said casually, Yes. Tai Shicheng and Tai Butian behind him nodded at the same time. Tai Shicheng chuckled and said, The matter of Du Shiqing treating my injuries before the 10 most urgent matters. Tai Shicheng and Butian both know this clearly. Him staying here is indeed a great danger. Chu Yang was shocked. He looked at Tai Butian, and Tai Butian also looked at him with a complicated expression. So Tai Butian already knew about this matter. Yet, he was able to control himself perfectly even when he was fully aware of the situation, allowing Du Shiqing to heal his father. The pressure on his heart was unimaginable. If Du Shiqing could do it the first time, who knows if he could not do it the second time? Continue speaking. Tai Shicheng's spirit was at its peak at this moment. His Majesty's illness cannot be delayed for much longer. Senior Du said that even if he tried his best, His Majesty could only be delayed for 2 more months. At that time Du Shiqing will definitely die. Chu Yang said casually, Yes. Whether it is Butian or Diwu Qingro at that time they will not let him go. Hearing Tai Shicheng's words, Chu Yang could not help but stare at him. This sickly king had already foreseen what would happen in the future. If we do not kill Du Shiqing, we will not be able to answer to Iron Cloud. But if we kill Du Shiqing, the consequences will be unimaginable. Du Shiqing's death will be a great help to Diwu Qingro. This will be his lifetime of medical connections. Yes. This Chu has received news that if His Majesty passes away, Diwu Qingro will begin his grand scheme. At that time Iron Cloud will be in chaos. Diwu Qingro had a great chance of succeeding. Even if it doesn't work, Iron Cloud's vitality will be greatly damaged. Tai Shicheng pondered for a moment and slowly said, That's right. At that time it was indeed Iron Cloud's greatest crisis. And the only way to resolve that crisis is to fight to the death. But I've told Butian many times, but he turned a deaf ear. Mr. Dean's disappearance has caught everyone off guard. Although I am aware of it, I still feel that it is too sudden. Chu Yang said solemnly, however, after this matter passed, I realized that we were caught unprepared. I'm afraid Diwu Qingro was even more caught unprepared. Well said. Tai Shicheng praised. Now I can finally be at ease. He paused and said sternly, Butian, no matter what happens in the future, you must not make things difficult for Minister Chu. Minister Chu is a far-sighted person. He will definitely be your greatest help. Tai Butian sadly closed his eyes. After a long time he softly agreed. After I was injured I wanted to take care of myself. But at that time Butian was still young and I was worried. So I forced myself to hold on. Later on I could not die even if I wanted to. Tai Shicheng said happily, Now that Minister Chu is here, I can finally rest assured. I have been waiting for this day for more than 3 years. It has been very tiring. It has been very tiring, very tiring. Tai Shicheng's expression darkened. The red glow on his face began to fade. The effect of the dragon spirit incense had begun to wear off. Tai Shicheng leaned against the wall. His eyes suddenly became blurred. There was an unspeakable longing and yearning in them. He murmured, "Empress, I will be reunited with you soon. All these years have you ever blamed me, Lianming?" Tai Shicheng murmured the names of his beloved wives and daughters that he had killed with his own hands. Suddenly, sorrow came from his heart. He suddenly cried out, "I want to die. I want to die. I want to." Chu Yang sighed in his heart. As a king, everyone saw his honor and glory. But who knew how much a king had to endure? The pain of this king in front of him was something that normal people would not even dare to imagine. If there is an afterlife. The light in Tai Shicheng's eyes became dimmer and dimmer. He murmured, "The road to becoming a king is long and full of blood. The country is always in my heart. But I have no choice but to sweep away my tears with a butcher's knife. My beloved wives and daughters are wronged souls. In this life I do not go far on the road to the underworld. In the next life I will abandon my roots. I will not go far." Haha. Tai Shicheng smiled weakly and said, "Love to rise but don't rise." His eyes suddenly emitted a very bright light. He was happy and elated. It was as if he could see his beloved on the road to the underworld, waiting to be reunited with him. Then, the light in his eyes suddenly went out. This king was still in his original position, but there was no longer any life in his body. The ruler of Iron Cloud Nation, Tai Shicheng, died today. Imperial Father, don't leave me behind. Tai Butian let out a shrill cry, her eyes suddenly widening in despair. She hugged Tai Shicheng's thin body tightly and used her face to rub desperately against her father's face, as if she wanted to pass the warmth of her body to her father. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and softly fell down. His eyes were closed and he was unconscious. Chu Yang sighed. Chu Yang sighed sadly. He didn't know what to feel as he watched the emperor finish his life's journey in front of his eyes. He thought back to what Tai Shicheng had just said. Lian ascended the throne at the age of 18. Within 10 years, he trained his troops and trained his horses. Looking at all the heroes in the world, there was no one who could match him. Conquering the south and conquering the north, he was invincible at the mere sight of the wind. Wherever he pointed, the ice melted. In just 5 years, he expanded Ironcloud's territory by a third. At that time, Lian was full of ambition. He always felt that the world was in my hands, and the world would eventually be unified by me. Wherever he pointed, he was invincible at the mere sight of the wind. Wherever he pointed, the ice melted. How majestic was this? How domineering was this? Looking at the body in front of him now, so thin that only his bones were left. Such a strong contrast made one's heart ache. The deepest pain in this king's heart was probably that he killed his own empress and his own daughter with his own hands. Even in death he still could not forget. But at that time, why did he act so viciously? This reason even in death he did not say. If this was a secret, then Tai Shicheng had undoubtedly brought this secret to his grave. In this life he did not go far on the road to the underworld. In the next life, he would abandon his roots of riches and honor. He would not step on the rainbow-colored path of the cold sky. He would live a carefree life in the mountains and rivers. A king before he died left behind these words, "I will live a carefree life in the mountains and rivers." This made one sigh even more deeply. This throne, who knows how many people in the world dreamed of sitting on it, but the one who actually sat on it left behind such sentiments and wishes before he died. Wasn't this a huge irony? This king, when he was on the verge of death, did not summon his ministers to carry out the matter of entrusting his children to Tai Butian. It was obvious that he was very confident in Tai Butian. Furthermore, by not doing so, he had also given Tai Butian an extremely clear hint. In the future, it will be your world. Chu Yang quietly retreated. Along the way, he did not let anyone stop him. He knew that Tai Butian urgently needed someone to accompany him, but this person could not be him. Tai Butian hated him too much right now. He could only wait until he had endured this period of pain. But no matter what, Tai Shicheng had died at this time, half a year earlier than in his previous life. Moreover, the harsh winter was about to arrive. The border would be stable for a period of time. In this kind of weather, Diwu Qingro would not have the time to do anything. This meant that Ironcloud's biggest crisis had quietly passed. But walking on the road, Chu Yang felt as if his heart was filled with lead. He did not feel the slightest bit of joy. Walking out of the palace, Chu Yang's heart was heavy. Suddenly he felt a chill on his face. It's snowing! It's snowing! Somewhere there was a cry of surprise. Chu Yang looked up and saw the fluttering snowflakes gently falling down. In an instant the whole world became misty. Right now, late autumn had just passed, and it was only the beginning of winter. Ironcloud Citadel's first snow had already fallen so early. Chu Yang walked quietly on the road. His body slowly turned snow-white, and the ground was also covered in a layer of white. The snowflakes that fell first quickly melted, but the snowflakes that fell later also scrambled to cover the traces of melting. Slowly, the ground became silvery white. Within half an hour, heaven and earth became covered in a layer of silver. Chu Yang breathed in the cold air. He felt his almost frozen thoughts become active in an instant. He turned back to look at the majestic imperial city. It stood quietly in the white snow. He was speechless. It was as if they were silently mourning the passing of a king. No matter what, today we have finally entered a new era, Chu Yang thought to himself. Then he took large strides and walked toward Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Heavy snow. Chu Yang's thoughts became clear. It was as if his heart was following the fluttering snowflakes and melting into the endless sky. Creaking sounds came from under his feet. Chu Yang suddenly remembered. In his previous life, Qingwu used to love snow the most. Every time it snowed, she would always quietly stand in the snow with an umbrella in her red dress. At that time it was the most peaceful and beautiful memory in Chu Yang's heart. That kind of elegance, that kind of beauty, every time Chu Yang thought about it, his heart trembled. Qingwu, what are you doing right now? Chu Yang's figure finally disappeared into the wind and snow. Even though Tai Shi-chang had been bedridden for many years and the people of Iron Cloud were already prepared for his death still shook Iron Cloud. Chapter 195. The three armies were led by three famous generals. Shunwei General Lu Jian led 80,000 troops to attack from the left. Tianwei General Yang Lai led 80,000 troops to attack from the right. Valiant Bravery General Chan Yu, who led 100,000 troops to attack from the left. Three armies, three famous generals, a total of 240,000 troops. Great Zhao's military operation this time could be said to be huge. Plus, it was early winter and the weather was cold. Great Zhao's operation could be said to be crazy. Iron Cloud's Gold Star Citadel and Hengyun Pass were in a state of emergency. War reports were constantly coming in. But this time, because of the death of Tai Shi-chang, Iron Cloud was in mourning. Great Zhao's military operation ignited a war craze in Iron Cloud Nation. The people's desire to fight was unprecedentedly strong. Tai Longcheng was guarding the border and could not come back to attend the funeral. Under the great pressure of Great Zhao, he was busy mobilizing his troops. Iron Cloud Citadel welcomed the funeral of the monarch Tai Shi-chang. Oh, Chang Yuan-he had a feeling. At the end of the road there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Tai Shi-chang's death shocked Chang Yuan-he and he was caught off guard. He knew that Tai Shi-chang's death meant that Diwu Qingrou's plan was completely disrupted. Everything would have to be rearranged. But there was also a great advantage, and that was that they could finally leave the citadel. These past few days of lockdown had caused Chang Yuan-he's hair to turn white. There was no way to communicate or leave the citadel. Looking at the time passing day by day, Yin Wu-fa, who had taken Meng Hun's solution and was like a corpse, Chang Yuan-he was burning with anxiety. There were dozens of searches every day. Chang Yuan-he did not dare to move. He had no choice but to kill the invisible falcon that was sending messages. Because, as long as they flapped their wings, all of their lives would be forfeit. Losing contact was better than losing one's life. With the death of Tai Shi-chang, the curfew was finally relaxed. Chang Yuan-he finally breathed a sigh of relief and quickly applied to leave the citadel. After coming here, he bought a lot of Iron Cloud specialties, especially the ones that could not be stored for long and would rot easily. All of the officials in Iron Cloud Citadel were busy preparing for the monarch's funeral. Why would they care about such a small matter? Chang Yuan-he applied to leave the city and was approved. Therefore, Chang Yuan-he did not waste any time. He gathered all his men and escorted a long carriage out of the South City Gate. He was finally out. When Cheng Yuan he walked out of Ironcloud Citadel, he could not help but look up at the snowflakes in the sky and take a few deep breaths. These past few days in Ironcloud Citadel, Cheng Yuan he felt like he was suffocating. He simply couldn't breathe. Now that they were out of the city, they suddenly felt like little birds that had flown out of their cages. From now on, as long as King of Hell Chu is in Ironcloud Citadel, I will not come back. Cheng Yuan he swore in his heart. But King of Hell Chu didn't give him the slightest opportunity to display his wisdom. It directly blocked all the roads. When Cheng Yuan he arrived at Ironcloud Citadel, the Hayamo clan had already been used by King of Hell Chu and left. His fist hit nothing but air. As for using his connections with other officials, Cheng Yuan he did not even dare to think about it. As soon as he arrived, he could see that all the officials in Ironcloud Citadel were in danger. They were all terrified. If his identity was exposed, he was afraid that King of Hell Chu would not even need to give an order. He would be torn apart alive by those officials. Then they would take his corpse to King of Hell Chu for a reward. Cheng Yuan he was very sure of this. It would be good enough if he could bring the rest of his men back to Great Zhao. Looking at the riders of Golden Horse Riders Department next to him, Cheng Yuan he wanted to cry. When they arrived, everyone was in high spirits. Now they were all dejected. When they arrived there were more than 40 people. Now there were only a dozen people left. Most of them were martial great masters. Only 3 revered martial artists. Everyone else had disappeared from Ironcloud Citadel forever. Looking back one last time at this sorrowful city, Cheng Yuan he shouted, "Let's go." The carriage rumbled as it traveled through the snow. Its speed was as slow as a turtle's crawl. They were still in Ironcloud territory. Cheng Yuan he did not dare to throw away the goods. If he threw them away, it would definitely arouse suspicion. Therefore, even though it was slow, Cheng Yuan he had to accept it. At Butian Pavilion, Chu Yang frowned. "That's it." Chen Yutong's face was covered in sweat. He grinned and said, "Yes, that's it." After the gates were opened, there were only a few groups of people who left. Plus, only 2 groups of merchants went south. Chu Yang was a little surprised. How could there be so few? During this time, many people must have gone crazy. There should not be so few. There are still many people waiting to leave. However, they are all from our country. Since they are in Ironcloud Citadel, they naturally want to attend His Majesty's funeral. Chen Yutong carefully explained. That makes sense. Chu Yang nodded. It's about time. Everyone go help with the funeral. Make sure to protect His Majesty well. Do not let anything happen. As for this matter, I will personally take care of it. Yes. Chen Yutong hesitated for a moment and asked, Minister, are you not going to attend? This is a bit disrespectful. I should hide. If His Majesty sees me, that would be a great disrespect. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. These days, whenever Tai Butian saw him, he would throw a tantrum. Yesterday, he even wanted to punch and kick him. Chu Yang escaped quickly so that he did not get hit. At this critical moment, why would Chu Yang go and ask for trouble? As long as he did not delay the day of the national funeral, it would be fine. For the rest of the time, he would avoid the limelight as much as possible. Even if nothing happened, Minister Chu would sneak out in the next few days. What's more, he had a legitimate reason to do so. The corner of Chen Yutong's mouth twitched. Even though he knew that he should not laugh about the emperor's death, he still could not help it. Tai Butian and Chu Yang's relationship was really strange. If Tai Butian was really unhappy, he only needed to issue a decree to remove Chu Yang from his position. However, Tai Butian refused to do so no matter what. He even personally went to teach King of Hell Chu a lesson. It was as if he was acting out of spite. Chu Yang said a few words and left in a hurry. Back at Heavenly Armament Pavilion, there were still a few people who did not care whether the Emperor of Ironcloud Nation was dead or not. Jimo's injuries were almost healed. Chu Yang said a few words and then the 5 people excitedly changed their clothes and followed Chu Yang out of the city. A few days ago, GMO showed his face and made the other people envious. Now it was finally their turn to come out for some fresh air. Moreover, it was such a snowy day, a group of people wearing snow-white clothes rode a white horse and galloped out of Tai Butian's Yunnan Gate. The soldiers guarding the gate were just about to question them when a card representing King of Hell Chu fell in front of them. They trembled and quickly opened the gate to let them in. The horse dashed out with a splashing sound. Oh well. Damn, this weather is too good. Luo Kadi, with a pair of panda eyes, looked up to the sky and sang excitedly. These few days, young Master Luo had been living in darkness. Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang would come to him to spar. He was not their match and could only take a beating. Almost every day he would take an average of 2 beatings. Young Master Luo was thoroughly angry. This morning he did not wait for Gu Duxing to come. He got up and went to challenge Rui Butong. First he would pick the soft one. Who would have thought that Rui Butong would throw out a series of strange punches? Young Master Luo was caught off guard. Both of his eyes were hit at the same time. He screamed and turned into a panda. Now that he finally came out for some fresh air, young Master Luo decided to relax. At the same time he swore in his heart, "Wait until I master my martial arts. The first person I will take revenge on is Gu Duxing. I will beat him 10 times a day. No, 20 times. The second was of course Chu Yang. Because Rui Butong's strange punches were actually taught by Chu Yang. This was simply unbearable. The third was of course Dong Wushang. Young Master Luo was gnashing his teeth every day. Every night, he would sleep with his sore bones and a belly full of fantasies. If this person did not have the ability to fantasize, then he really would not be able to live through this day. GMO and the others all laughed. Even Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang, the 2 famous cold-faced people, laughed heartily. It had to be said that these guys fought together every day. Although there were bruises on their faces every day, the relationship between them was getting deeper and deeper. Men and horses in the wind and snow followed the marks on the ground that had not yet disappeared. They chased all the way without any concealment. Chu Yang was very confident. Although the people he brought were all martial great masters, each of them represented the supreme martial arts of a big aristocratic family. In terms of fighting power, they were not weaker than ordinary revered martial artists. Even if a 2nd or 3rd grade revered martial artist fought with them, they were still very confident. The experts of Golden Horse Riders department were almost all eliminated. Even if they met face to face, Chu Yang was not afraid. Not to mention he still had the Calamity Sword in his hand. Therefore, Chu Yang was very confident and boldly chased after them. Sections of the journey were left behind. After running for 30 to 40 miles, they saw a long line of horses in front of them, moving quickly in the snow. Gu Duxing snorted coldly. He waved his hand and said, "Luo Kadi, go." "Why me?" Luo Kadi said discontentedly. "There are so many people idle." "You want me to go?" Dong Wushang turned his head. His eyes were very dangerous. Luo Kadi stuttered. "Then you want me to go?" GMO asked very fiercely. "Anyway, I'm not going." Rui Badong raised his nose. "Do you want me to go by myself?" Gu Duxing looked at Luo Kadi majestically. "Or let boss go. You dare to say this?" Luo Kadi glared. He was speechless. After a while he said dejectedly, "I'll go." For a moment, he hung his head dejectedly. His high spirits just now had flown away. Since he had no choice, young Master Luo was very angry. However, the target of his anger was the long line of carriages in front of them. "It's all because of you. I have no choice but to lose face. You have to pay the price." His legs squeezing the white horse, Luo Kadi rushed out like a gust of wind. He shouted impatiently all the way, "Giddy! Giddy! 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 Giddy!" He rushed to the front of the group of horses and turned his horse around. Then, with a wave of his hand, a large tree by the roadside fell down with a loud boom, blocking the road. Then he turned his horse around and rode on it. Then he waved his hand and a silver light flashed. Chapter 196. It's getting more and more alike. Even this demeanor is similar. The black-clothed man sighed. He turned around and walked 2 steps. Then he suddenly raised his hand, and a wisp of purple light flew towards Chu Yang. He said, "You can keep this thing. It can be considered a small gift from me to you." After walking a few steps, he turned back and looked at Chu Yang's face. He shook his head and sighed. Finally, he stomped his foot and flew up into the sky. He disappeared in a flash and said, Goodbye, little one. Suddenly he disappeared without a trace. Far away, an ethereal voice echoed between heaven and earth. Going through 1,000 mountains without giving up. Where can I ask for the regrets of my life? Endless road, autumn every year, drunk every day, unable to quench my sorrows. The voice was bleak and there was a faint sense of misery. It echoed in the snow for a long time. Chu Yang looked blankly in the direction where he disappeared. He didn't know why, but he actually felt sad. It was as if his entire state of mind was like this snowy weather. It became confused, ethereal, and unreal. He opened his palm and looked. A purple jade pendant lay quietly in his hand, emitting a sparkling light. It was just a pure purple crystal. There were no words engraved on it. He sighed and kept the jade pendant. A question lingered in his heart. Who is this person? Boss, are you okay? Gu Duxing and the others immediately ran over and asked with concern. I'm fine. Chu Yang forced a smile and said, let's go back. He didn't know why, but Chu Yang suddenly felt very depressed. He silently mounted his horse and waved his hand. The strong horse neighed and galloped into the snow. Gu Duxing and the others looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Without further delay, the 5 of them mounted their horses at the same time and chased in the direction Chu Yang left. The horse galloped and disappeared in a flash. The snow fluttered and fell densely. Not long after, it covered the traces of Chu Yang and the others. The entire ground was white and flat. It was impossible to see where someone had walked and where the road originally was. A long time after Chu Yang and the others left, the man in green was flying all the way. He was like a ray of light in the snow, constantly flashing and disappearing. He had already gone a long way. Suddenly, he stopped abruptly and muttered, something is still not right. He stood in the snow and thought carefully. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead and muttered, you really have a pig's head. How could a mere martial master like him dare to carry such a precious item with him? If he doesn't have it on him, does that mean he really doesn't have it? She sighed in annoyance and muttered to herself. When I asked his father, this little brat said my father. He died a long time ago. This was very strange. Why was there so much resentment? If what he said is true, the son of a hunter, then it's even more impossible. After thinking for a while, he said, I better go back and take a look. Thinking of this, he turned around and flew towards the direction where he had met Chu Yang. But at this time, Chu Yang had already left for a long time. Standing at the place where he had spoken with Chu Yang, the man in blue looked around. However, all traces of their conversation were covered by the heavy snow, and nothing could be seen. Little brat, you're walking really fast. The man in green snorted and revealed a proud smile. He said, don't tell me that jade pendant was given to you for free? Closing his eyes, he activated his divine power and carefully sensed it. It turned out that he had left a trace of his energy in that jade pendant. This way, no matter where the jade pendant was, as long as it was not more than 300 miles away, he could sense the location of the jade pendant once he activated his energy. All these years, in order to find people, he had given out hundreds of such jade pendants. Although they all ended in disappointment, this method of finding people had never failed. After a while, the man in blue opened his eyes. Strange. Even if he was riding a horse, he should have only traveled a few dozen miles. Why can't I sense him at all? It turned out that the energy of the jade pendant had completely disappeared, as if it had never existed in this world. Strange. What's going on? The man in blue slowly paced around here. His face was filled with worry. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. Where should he go to find him? I'll look for him for a few more days. If I still can't find him, I'll go back and tell my family. The man in blue scratched his head. He had given out hundreds of jade pendants. Because of this, his family had mobilized hundreds of people. Every time they were disappointed, he would be punished. It was a bit chilling. Motherfucker. He really is a little devil who torments people. Thinking back and forth, the man in blue looked up to the sky and sighed. He could not help but feel a bit angry. He cursed, motherfucker, you lost a baby less than a month old. Yet you let old he come and find him. Motherfucker, how many people are there in heavenly layer? Isn't this like finding a needle in a haystack? You can't find him, yet you take it out on me every time. Is there any justice in this world? After sighing for a while, he finally stomped his feet and disappeared with a gloomy face. At this time, Chu Yang had already returned to Iron Cloud Citadel. When the man in blue gave him the purple crystal, the sword spirit sensed that there was a strange aura inside. It immediately warned him, "This thing has a tracking aura. It is not appropriate for you to carry it around." So Chu Yang did as he was told. The sword spirit put away the purple crystal. When Hu Lai facing Calamity sword scraping point sensed the purple crystal, it immediately swallowed it. It completely destroyed the corpse. Chu Yang hadn't thought that this matter would bring him so much trouble. Right now, he only felt that this guy was not a good person. He actually left a tracking item on my body? What did he want to do? Tai Shicheng's funeral would be held in 3 days. As the ruler of a country, having such a hasty funeral was indeed a bit slow. However, Iron Cloud Nation was in a critical period. The longer it dragged on, the more time it would give Di Wuqing Ro more time. Therefore, after some discussion, they decided to keep it simple. After Chu Yang returned to Butian Pavilion, Chang'ong came to report this matter. Chang'ong stammered and said, "His Highness did not mention Minister Chu." Chu Yang quietly nodded and said, "You can go do your work." Chang'ong and Chan Yutong both left anxiously. Chu Yang naturally understood the meaning of his words. Obviously, everyone thought that he was going to be unlucky. The officials of Iron Cloud had asked Tai Butian when the funeral was being held. They had said that the mysterious king of Hell Chu should be present at the funeral of His Majesty, no matter what his identity was, and no matter how much he wanted to maintain his mystery. But this decision was ruthlessly rejected by Tai Butian. At that time, Tai Butian said, "Minister Chu? What do you want him to do?" Her voice was filled with anger and dissatisfaction. And Butian Pavilion's actions these days were also notified by the Ministry of Justice. It was not the minister who gave the order. Therefore, some people guessed that King of Hell Chu was about to step down. All the signs pointed to this point. For a moment, many people were very happy. In fact, many people were planning to humiliate this mysterious King of Hell Chu once he stepped down from the throne. These days, they were scared too much by him. Chu Yang laughed at such rumors. He naturally understood why Tai Butian did not let him attend the funeral. Tai Butian was indeed angry, but she definitely wouldn't go to the extent of completely falling out with Chu Yang. The most important reason was that no matter what, Chu Yang's identity could not be revealed. And another reason was that Tai Butian needed to calm down. Tai Butian needed time. And another reason was that a country could not be without a ruler for a day. After the late emperor passed away, a new emperor ascended the throne. There was a change of dynasty. Tai Butian would be very busy during this time. She really did not have the mood to care about Butian Pavilion. And everything in Butian Pavilion was proceeding in an orderly manner. It was only because they had no experience with the death of an emperor and the ascension of a new emperor that they needed to be notified by the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Rights. These departments did not have the slightest command over Butian Pavilion's actions. Chu Yang also did not understand these things, so he was happy to relax. He was a hands-off shopkeeper for a period of time. He walked out of Butian Pavilion and came to Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He received a piece of good news. After returning, Dong Wuxiang immediately meditated and practiced. He was actually about to break through. Everyone was happy for him, but Dong Wuxiang was the only one who was unhappy. He went from 3rd to 4th in such a short time. No one would be happy if this happened to him. Dong Wuxiang still remembered Chu Yang's promise. When he saw Chu Yang return, he asked excitedly, "Boss, I remember you once said that as long as I break through this month, you will give me a saber." Chu Yang nodded. Seeing his anxious face, he could not help but laugh. "What? Can't wait?" Dong Wuxiang scratched his head embarrassedly and said, "Then I will go back to the clan to get the ink steel." "All right." After receiving Chu Yang's confirmation, Dong Wuxiang did not hesitate for a moment. He turned and ran out. His voice came from afar. "I will be back immediately." Then he actually disappeared. GMO puffed out his chest and said, "Boss." Hee. "What?" "Didn't boss say, as long as I can stay, he will give me a sword?" GMO rubbed his hands. "It's this sword. Did you remember wrongly?" Chu Yang was stunned. He tilted his head and said playfully, "What you said to me was, as long as you can stay and make outstanding contributions, then these weapons will be your reward." "Yes, and I only said this to Dong Wuxiang because his saber is specially made. I don't remember saying this to you?" "Dear boss. Dear big brother." GMO was so anxious that his eyebrows fluttered in disarray. His face turned red. "Big brother." He pitifully grabbed Chu Yang's hand and shook it back and forth. He looked like a child who was asking for candy from an adult. "My lifelong wish is to obtain such a sword. Old man, please help me. Just think of it as doing a good deed. Just think of it as doing a good deed. Just think of it as." Chapter 197. Ower. Ower. GMO jumped up high, jumping back and forth in the courtyard. "Wah! Heavens! Earth! My life's dream has finally been fulfilled. Wah! Don't be happy." Chu Yang's face darkened. GMO immediately kept quiet out of fear. He put on a flattering smile and said, "Boss, what instructions do you have? Don't worry, if you want me to climb a mountain of swords, I won't jump into a pot of boiling oil. If you want me to go east, I won't go west. If you want me to stink Gudu Xing, I won't trample on Luo Kadi." This sentence attracted the two people's eyes and cold snorts. "You want a long sword? Or a short sword? There is only one long sword and one short sword." As soon as this sentence came out, Luo Kadi became anxious. He hurriedly raised his hand and shouted, "Boss, I want a short sword." Luo Kadi's martial arts belonged to the light category. A long sword was not suitable for him. He had been drooling over that short sword for a long time. "Get lost. You broke through?" GMO shouted angrily. After thinking for a long time, he said, "I want a long sword." Luo Kadi relaxed. His eyes flashed with a trace of gratitude. "Are you sure?" Chu Yang asked seriously. "I'm sure." GMO nodded vigorously. GMO was different from Luo Kadi. GMO's G clan's martial arts were suitable for both long and short swords. A short sword had its uses, and a long sword had its strengths. However, in terms of concealment, a short sword was easier to carry. It was also more unexpected. But now that he knew that Luo Kadi liked a short sword, although GMO scolded him on the surface, he had already decided to leave the short sword for Luo Kadi. He wanted to leave a suitable weapon for his brother. Good. Chu Yang's eyes showed a look of appreciation. How could he not see that GMO actually wanted a short sword? But for GMO to make such a sacrifice, Chu Yang was still very gratified. The word brother had finally left a deep impression in the hearts of these three heavens debauches. I agree. Chu Yang nodded. "The sword is with Gudu Xing. You can ask Gudu Xing to give it to you." The corners of GMO's mouth twitched. He was dumbfounded. He hadn't forgotten that just now, in order to get the sword, he had expressed his loyalty to Boss by flattering him and saying that he would humiliate Gudu Xing. But now, in the blink of an eye, karma had come. With a bitter face, he turned his head to look at Gudu Xing, only to see second brother Gu looking at him with a cold face and a sneer at the corner of his mouth. He was looking at him with a playful expression. "Oh my, do you want sword?" GMO stupidly opened his mouth. His face was full of regret. "Second brother. Dearest second brother. My living immortal." GMO hurriedly rushed to Gu Duxing's side and did his best to flatter him. Gu Duxing turned around and looked up at the sky. GMO turned in front of Gu Duxing with a whoosh. "Second brother, wow." Gu Duxing turned around again. GMO paced back and forth for a while. But he was at his wits' end. He anxiously scratched his head and started to sweat profusely. My neck is so sore." Gu Duxing twisted his neck left and right, making cracking sounds. "Second brother, let me help you rub it." GMO was extremely diligent. With a face full of flattery, he worked very hard. My arms are also sore," Gu Duxing said with a bitter face. "Second brother, let me help you rub it." GMO immediately changed his target. "My arms are really hard. Let me help you rub it. My waist is sore. I'm already so old." Gu Duxing sighed. "Let me help you rub it." GMO's eyes were about to spit fire. "My legs are also sore." Gu Duxing's whole body suddenly had a lot of problems. "Let me help you rub it." Jimo's whole body was sweating after a while. How could he swallow his anger? Alright, since you are quite obedient. Gu Duxing dragged out his tone and looked at Jimo. Jimo stood at attention. Second brother, don't worry. From now on I will definitely listen to you. If you tell me to go east, I will definitely not go west. If you tell me to beat a dog, I will definitely not beat a chicken. Look at you. You still want a sword? Aren't you cheap? Originally there was no problem. But you still caused a lot of trouble. And you still have to beg me in a humble voice. Cheap person. Gu Duxing snorted. Yes. My mouth is cheap. My mouth is cheap. GMO was about to die from hidden bitterness. He couldn't blame others for criticizing him. His mouth was a bit cheap. After setting up a fight, Gu Duxing saw that this guy was about to lose his temper. He no longer made things difficult for him and slowly went in. After a while, he took out a long sword and threw it in front of GMO. Here for you. Don't break it. Jimo's face was full of heartache. He took a big stride forward and pulled out the long sword. Suddenly a cold light reflected on the snow, awe-inspiring. Waha! My divine sword. GMO held the long sword lovingly, completely forgetting his previous humility. He majestically brandished the sword a few times. He was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Luo Kadi and Rue Butong looked at this sword like wolves, full of envy. Ha! Jimo's face suddenly changed. He looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. He shouted murderously, Gu Duxing! Second brother Gu! Come. Pull out your black dragon sword. Little brother wants to spar with you in swordsmanship. Chu Yang and the other three staggered. They stared dumbfoundedly at this shameless guy who was tearing down the bridge after crossing the river. Countless black lines appeared on their foreheads. Waha, dog ant! Dog ant! Jimo's nose was in the air. He was insufferably arrogant. Under extreme ecstasy and excitement, he began to mumble some words that didn't belong to a human. Gu Duxing gave a look and shouted, Go! Beat up this dog ant! With a whistling sound, the three of them gritted their teeth and bared their fangs and brandished their claws at the same time. They didn't look at the long sword in Jimo's hand. They simply pinned this guy to the ground and punched him. Jimo was caught off guard. His entire body fell flat on the ground and was firmly pressed into the snow. Gu Duxing rode on his neck. His 2 feet stepped on Jimo's elbows neither lightly nor heavily. A pair of fists fell down like raindrops. Woo! Oh, goose nourishes liver, I don't dare. Jimo's mouth was deeply blocked under the snow. He let out muffled screams and begs for mercy. His 2 legs twitched and twitched. After a long while Chu Yang stopped them. He restrained his laughter and pulled GMO out of the snow. GMO looked like a sesame seed cake. GMO roared angrily and was about to fight. Okay everyone, let's talk about the man in green we met today. Chu Yang's face was very serious. In your opinion, what is this person's level? Definitely emperor level. Or even higher. When it came to business, the 4 guys became serious at the same time. Luo Kadi thought for a while and said with certainty, Well, I think so too. Gu Duxing resumed his cold face and said, And this person is very strange. He just showed his face and then left. His purpose. As he said this, Gu Duxing looked at Chu Yang. He knew that the reason why the man in green threw them out was to talk to Chu Yang alone. In other words, Chu Yang definitely knew that person's purpose. Chu Yang's face sank. Gu Duxing and the other 2 felt depressed. They couldn't help but look at each other and didn't continue this topic. Is there such an expert in your clan? Chu Yang asked. No. Gu Duxing said very straightforwardly. If Gu clan had an emperor-level expert, Gu clan's position in the 3 heavens would be completely stabilized. Gu Miaoling's crime wouldn't be a big deal. Our G clan has 2 ancestors. Cough cough, their auras are similar to that person's. But they are not as scary as this person. GMO said hesitantly. But this matter is a secret. Well, our Luo clan also has 2. But they are not as good as that person. Luo Kadi was very straightforward. He blinked and said, This is also a secret. Gu Duxing and Chu Yang looked at each other. They both knew the situation of Gu clan. No wonder Gu clan was so angry when Gu Miaoling stole the elixir. It turned out that Gu Clan's situation was really bad. Ji Clan had an emperor-level expert, and Luo Clan had an emperor-level expert. From this, it could be inferred that Mo Clan, Black Saber Clan, Mo Clan, and other similar clans must have emperor-level experts in secret. Otherwise, they wouldn't have maintained such a balance of power. But Gu Clan, which was also a super clan, only had a Peking-level expert. Although they were only one step away from emperor level, this step was like 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers. This distance was huge. So that black-clothed person shouldn't be from the three heavens? Chu Yang asked. Yes, if such a person was in the three heavens, he would have caused a huge commotion. He wouldn't be so unknown. The four nodded. If such a person appeared in the three heavens with their information network, they wouldn't have not heard of him. The four of them were very confident about this. That is the upper three seals. Chu Yang's eyes flashed with a complicated light. He raised his head and quietly looked at the white snow in the sky. His thoughts were far away, and he didn't know where they had drifted to. Upper three heavens. The two people who created my life and gave birth to me, are they in the upper three heavens? Chu Yang's heart suddenly became furious. You are in the upper three heavens, but you threw me to the lower three heavens. Emperor-level experts, humph. If the upper three heavens searched the lower three heavens, how could they not find me? Why was there no news for 17 years? Gu Duxing and the others felt Chu Yang's abnormality, and no longer spoke. After a long time, in order to break this awkward silence, GMO stretched his neck and smiled. After a while I will go back. He paused and smiled. He scratched his head embarrassedly. The beginning of December is my birthday. Chapter 198. Hehe. GMO did not catch the hidden meaning this time. His face was a little red as he said, the main thing is that I have to celebrate this birthday with my mother. I heard that in order to give birth to me, my mother had a serious illness. The four of them fell silent. When it came to the elders, especially a sacred word like mother, no one dared to joke. Parents were the most respectable people in this world. Those who were unfilial to their parents were also the targets of disdain by the world. Filial piety was the most important virtue. This was the bottom line of morality in this heavenly realm. Haha boss, when is your birthday? Su Butong chuckled and said, when the time comes we must have a good time. Miao Butong's words directly touched the deepest pain in Chu Yang's heart. I don't know when my birthday is. Chu Yang's voice was very calm, but behind this calmness, there seemed to be a fierce storm brewing. The corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably. His voice was a little hoarse as he said, I was picked up by my master. He was silent for a moment. He raised his face, letting his face welcome the cold snow in the sky. He said quietly, I also don't know who my father is, who my mother is. What is my surname, what is my name? I have never celebrated my birthday. Chu Yang smiled faintly. He coughed lightly and said softly, I also don't know what it feels like to celebrate my birthday. And even more so, I don't know what it feels like to celebrate my mother's birthday. Ha! His expression was very calm, and his voice was very calm. There was no fluctuation, he even smiled. But in this calm voice, Gu Duxing and GMO could clearly feel that Chu Yang's heart was bleeding. It was as if his heart was splitting apart little by little. Boss, you still have us. Luo Kudi's heart warmed. He did not know why, but he actually had an impulse to cry. Su Butong, GMO and Gu Duxing also looked at Chu Yang with shining eyes. They said in unison, yes, you still have us. They did not expect Chu Yang's background to be so miserable. At this moment, their hearts suddenly became heavy. Yes, I still have you. Chu Yang smiled and said, I have always celebrated my birthday, but it's just one day. No. Among us brothers besides you, our birthdays are also your birthdays. Gu Duxing said excitedly, then you can celebrate this birthday at least 5 times a year. 5 brothers will accompany you. No. Yes. Chu Yang smiled warmly and said, there's another one. He's my junior martial brother. His name is very strange. He's called Tan Tan. Talk? The 4 of them were tongue-tied. They couldn't understand why someone in this world would choose such a name. The epiphany of the epiphyllum. Chu Yang smiled and said, you guys don't know how interesting this little one is. He introduced Tan Tan to them while smiling. Then he said, "You guys will surely like him if you see him. Especially his character. He is super narcissistic to the point of scaring people." Haha. Chu Yang couldn't help but smile as he recalled Tan Tan's appearance. "Is that so? Hahaha. Then I really want to broaden my horizons. Such a narcissistic guy is really rare." Gu Duxing and the others immediately became interested. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation in the Double Heavens continent. It was snowing in the lower three heavens. Iron Cloud was holding a funeral. Chu Yang was chatting with his brothers. Cheng Yuan he was still trekking in the snow. Diwu Qingro was still strategizing in the Prime Minister's mansion, waiting. The war at the border was temporarily suspended. The lower three heavens continent was only a little cold. There was no snow. It had been 7 days since Mo Tianji brought Mo Qingwu back to the clan. In these 7 days the Mo clan seemed to have changed completely. Mo Tianji sat cross-legged in his abode. In front of him was a small and exquisite tea table. On the tea table steam rose and the fragrance of tea filled the room. It looked very relaxed. But now Mo Tianji's handsome face had a hint of anger and worry. Mo Tianji had always been expressionless. For him to show such an expression, it was usually something that was far beyond his control. Thinking of the day when he had just returned to the clan, Mo Tianji felt like he was about to explode. But he couldn't bear it. That day when he returned to the clan, what surprised him was that his elder brother, Mo Tianyun, who was supposed to be training in the lower three heavens, was also at home. He held his little sister's hand and just entered the clan. He bumped into him. Mo Tianji's original intention was to return as soon as possible and avoid Mo Tianyun. Then, he would explain the situation of his little sister. As long as his elder brother and his henchmen were not present, everything would be much easier to discuss. At least he could delay for a while. But he didn't expect to bump into him as soon as he came back. Well, looking at this situation, Mo Tianyun seemed to have specially waited for his return. "Oh, you're back?" Mo Tianyun's mouth hooked up, revealing a bewitching smile. Compared to Mo Tianji's calmness, Mo Tianyun seemed a little gloomy and feminine. His eyes were slender and often squinted, shooting out chilling rays of light. And this was what Mo Tianji disliked the most. "You are scary." "Fine. As long as you know how scary you are, it's fine. Why do you have to pretend to be a poisonous snake? Are you afraid that others don't know how scary you are?" Mo Tianji had always disdained his elder brother's behavior. "How many days have you been back?" Mo Tianji calmly asked. Mo Qingwu timidly pulled her second brother's hand. Half of her small body hid behind him. She timidly called out to her elder brother in a low voice. "Little sister is also back." Mo Tianyun smiled at Mo Qingwu. Then, he raised his head and looked at his younger brother. He lightly said, "Yes, I have been back for 7 or 8 days. "Well, elder brother has been guarding the door for these 7 or 8 days. Are you tired?" Mo Tianji's eyes quietly flashed with a trace of anger. He didn't want to provoke Mo Tianyun verbally, but the anger in his heart at this moment made him feel like he couldn't control it. Because the one who was hurt was the little sister he cared about the most. Mo Qingwu. Mo Tianyun came back 7 or 8 days ago. Basically, he stayed in the lower three heavens for less than a month. Then he went down and came back? Why? During this period of time, how could he not know about the attack on him and his little sister? But he didn't do anything and went straight home. Moreover, after returning home, he waited at the door for his return. It was as if he had a card up his sleeve and prepared everything properly. This made Mo Tianji think of some frightening things. His heart was filled with coldness and anger. "How can you be tired guarding the door every day?" Mo Tianyun softly said. "As long as I can see second brother and little sister come back safely, I am willing to stand at the door for a lifetime." "Thank you, elder brother. Little brother really doesn't know how to repay big brother's kindness to us." Mo Tianji gently took a breath and suppressed the churning emotions in his heart. His face revealed a grateful expression as he softly said. Mo Tianyun looked at Mo Tianji's expression and had an impulse to fiercely punch this handsome face in front of him. Mo Tianji had always been like this. No matter what happened, even if his lungs were about to explode from anger, His face would not show the slightest bit of anger. Just like the grateful expression on his face at this moment. It made people know that it was fake, but they couldn't find any fault with it. I heard that little sister was injured? Emotianyun asked with concern. Emotonji shook his head in shame. Then he sorrowfully said, "It's all because of this useless elder brother of mine. This elder brother of mine has the heart of a wolf and the lungs of a dog. He is worse than a beast. He didn't take good care of his little sister. So this elder brother of mine should be hacked into pieces and left without a complete corpse." Emotianyun suddenly became angry. Emotionji gritted his teeth in self-reproach. But, in fact, he was scolding himself with every sentence. How could Emotianyun not know this? Second brother, you don't need to blame yourself. Everyone has their own misfortunes and blessings. Everything is predestined by the will of the heavens. You can't force it. Emotianyun lightly said. Even if little sister is injured, it may not be a bad thing for her. At least, she doesn't have to rush into the wilderness and save her life. I am the big brother. Don't fight. If you fight, you won't be able to keep your life. Emotionji gently smiled and said with a sigh of approval, Big brother is right. Even the emperors of the world have times when there is a change of dynasty. There is also a time when the family is ruined. Who can say for sure what the will of the heavens is? Don't think that you are safe. After Emotionji finished speaking, the two brothers no longer spoke. One stood inside the door and the other outside. Seashore quietly looked at each other. Both pairs of eyes were sharp and threatening. But both of them were smiling as if they were brothers who had just met after a long time and were chatting intimately. Emochingwu cowered behind her second brother. Her small face was pale. Since childhood, she was most afraid of her two elder brothers when they were together. Every time, both of them would have a warm smile on their faces and would say warm words. Sometimes they would discuss enthusiastically. Sometimes they would praise together. Sometimes they would sigh together. She seemed to be able to understand every word they said, but she didn't seem to understand every word they said. Regardless of whether they were being intimate or speaking calmly, she couldn't help but feel chills all over her body. During the whole process, the two king-level masters stood behind Emotionji and did not say a word. Behind Emotianyun there were also two king-level masters. They were like clay sculptures. Oh, look at my carelessness. Emotianyun patted his forehead. Little brother and little sister are coming home and I actually stopped them at the door. Ha ha ha, if outsiders saw this they would think that I am too much. Ha ha, second brother, little sister, come in quickly. Father has been talking about you two every day. He said that you two are smart. In the future, the three of us will work together and bring glory to the Mo clan. Haha, he especially said that second brother's wisdom is unparalleled in the world. You will be my number one helper in the future. Father has already said that you are only a subordinate. You can be a helper but you can't make the decision. The one who has the final say is still me. Big brother is right. Blocking the entrance like this is indeed an eyesore. If someone were to see this, they would think that this younger brother of mine is arrogant and domineering. So, I am blocking Big Brother's path and making it difficult for Big Brother to pass. With me here you can't pass. Chapter 199. The two brothers' faces were full of smiles. They were friendly and natural, from the bottom of their hearts. Anyone who saw them would be envious of them. Look at the two brothers of the Mo clan. They have such a good relationship. They could even wear the same pants. No one knew that in the hearts of these two brothers, they had already regarded each other as irreconcilable foes. The guards at the door watched the two young masters go in. They shuddered and rolled up their sleeves. Everyone's arms were full of goosebumps. The murderous intention hidden in the two brothers' friendliness and gentleness was too frightening. As for the two brothers, who were walking further and further away, they were still having a friendly conversation. Second brother, is Xiao Wu's injury serious? Emotianyun asked worriedly, who did it? It's very serious. Emotianji's eyes flashed with murderous intention. He coldly said, it's the Mo clan. They are heartless bastards. They actually injured Xiao Wu's 3 meridians. I am very angry about this. Don't worry, big brother. Little brother has already sworn an oath. If that heartless bastard still wants to make a move on little sister, Little brother will not hesitate to drag that heartless bastard down to hell with me. Mo Qingwu's injury could not be concealed. If the clan investigated, it would be very easy to find out. It was better to be straightforward. My little sister's 3 meridians are already destroyed. If you still want to hurt her, then even if I can't get the Mo clan, you can also forget about getting it. Heartless bastard. Mo Tianyun murmured. His eyes flashed with murderous intention. He heavily said, that's right. The Mo clan is under my Mo clan. So I won't forgive such a heartless bastard who offended me. If I see him, I will definitely cut him into pieces. If you dare to offend your superior, I will dare to clean you up. Once again, the 2 brothers looked at each other with a tacit smile on their faces. The 4 king-level masters who followed the 2 brothers all felt their palms sweating. Their whole body was cold. Following these 2 young masters was really a test of their heart's endurance. Especially when the 2 of them were together, it was simply torture for the people around them. Mo Tianyun suddenly stopped and stood with his hands behind his back. With an expressionless face he said, Uncle Chengyu, do you know your crime? Mo Chengyu's face turned pale. He bowed and said, yes, your subordinate knows his mistake. And as the young lady's guardian, you actually neglected your duty and carelessness, causing the young lady to suffer such irreparable harm. Mo Chengyu, have all these years of peace turned you into an idiot? Mo Tianyun's eyes flashed coldly. This subordinate is guilty. Mo Chengyu's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. His heart was full of excuses. But it was a fact that Mo Qingwu had suffered such serious injuries. Moreover, Mo Tianyun clearly wants to use me to show Mo Tianji his power. If he tried to explain himself, he was afraid that he would be killed on the spot. Mo Tianji wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't. A moment ago, Mo Tianyun had spoken in the capacity of an elder brother. But now, he was speaking in the capacity of a young clan lord. If he interfered now, he would be committing a crime. And since you know your crime, this young clan lord will announce the clan's decision. Mo Tianyun was expressionless. Mo Chengyu's negligence is unforgivable. But since he has always been meritorious, we will not punish him severely. Instead, we will remove him from his guardian position. He will take his family to Zhonglan battlefront and serve the clan. Mo Chengyu's body trembled. Isn't this driving me away from the young lady's side? Elder brother, aren't you going overboard? Mo Tianji frowned. If it wasn't for Mo Chengyu risking his life to protect her, would little sister still be alive? Mo Chengyu might have done something wrong, but this is too harsh. This is the decision of the clan's elders. Mo Tianyun sighed and said, second brother, I don't want to do this, but I am not the clan lord yet. The one in charge of the clan is of course father. Could it be that you have an objection to father's decision? Who do you think you are? You dare to point your finger? I will explain to father. Mo Tianji said casually. I hope you can succeed and save Uncle Chengyu from the pain of a long journey. Mo Tianyun's eyes flashed with a trace of mockery. I don't want Uncle Chengyu to leave me. Mo Qingwu protested timidly. Little sister, be good. This is an adult's matter. Do you understand? Mo Tianyun smiled and gently stroked Mo Qingwu's hair as he comforted her. Mo Qingwu's body trembled. Her face flashed with a trace of fear as she gently took half a step back. Mo Tianyun's eyes flashed with a trace of gloominess. He smiled and said, let's go. Father is still waiting for you. Father and the elders of the Council of Elders are all very concerned about little sister's injuries. Mo Tianji's face twisted as he recalled this. He gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked. Just like that, once they returned to the clan, they immediately called for a meeting to pass judgment on Mo Chengyu. The next morning, he was ordered to take his family and leave the clan for Zhonglan battlefront. Even though he tried to argue in the face of the clan's authority, no amount of wisdom could help. The Elders Guild didn't even give him a chance to reason with them. They were heartless. Immediately after, they examined little sister's body. One by one they sighed helplessly. Their eyes were filled with pity. Mo Tianji still remembered that his little sister was tightly hugging the saber that Chu Yang had given her. She was standing in the hall trembling. Her originally lively eyes were now like a pitiful little rabbit. Looking at this and looking at that delicate and pitiful appearance made his heart ache on the spot. He still remembered that his little sister was crying as she threw herself into father's arms. Father had already reached out his hand, but his face showed a conflicted expression as he pulled it back. At that time, his little sister stopped in her tracks and stood in front of father in a daze. Tears flowed down her white cheeks. Poof! Emo Tianji angrily slammed his fist on the tea table. Even though Emo Qingwu was young, her sensitive heart had already sensed that something was wrong. The elders who were originally kind and amiable were now looking at her strangely. Regret, anger, disappointment. But there was no love, no pity. Even her father, who had always liked her, turned his face away and sighed when she looked at him. Emo Qingwu was perplexed. Her young heart was full of fear and uneasiness. Boundless fear flooded her in an instant. She didn't understand what was going on. Why did everything change after I went out to play once? Emo Qingwu felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. For a moment she felt as if she was floating and her soul had left her body. At that moment, she could not help but think of Chu Yang. She thought of Chu Yang's eyes that were filled with love and doting. That was a complete protection. Suddenly, Emo Qingwu's young heart yearned to return to Chu Yang's side. Her heart was calling out to him continuously and she was crying. Brother Chu Yang, where are you? When are you coming to see little Wu? Little Wu is really pitiful now. Emo Tianji frowned tightly. He already felt that something was wrong. Emo Tianyun came back 8 days earlier than him, and had already arranged everything in the clan, even including Emo Qingwu's treatment. Even though the clan did not explicitly state this, Emo Tianji knew that Emo Tianyun would not leave it out. Emo Tianji racked his brains to think of a way to make his little sister's life more comfortable. He did not expect to give Emo Qingwu the same treatment as before. Emo Chongyu's departure was a clear signal. Emo Tianyun would have an overwhelming advantage in the power struggle between him and Emo Qingwu. If he were to eliminate the power of Emo Qingwu's side. Emo Tianji grabbed the edge of the tea table and murmured, "You are wrong. Emo Tianyun, if you did not see me as an opponent, I would not have fought with you. Unfortunately, it was because of your own suspicions that you took the initiative to deal with me. That was the reason why you made a strong enemy for yourself. Now that you have done this to little Wu, you and I cannot live under the same sky." Thinking of this, he smiled bitterly. When he was young, his big brother was his idol. He had always been proud of his big brother because he was only 5 years older than him. But he had done things that he did not even dare to think about. At that time, he always thought that as long as the two of them were together, and he always listened to his big brother, the Emo clan would be able to flourish even when the two of them were injured. In these 3 days, the clan would not fall. However, since a few years ago, he inexplicably encountered a series of crises, and then he unintentionally found out that his big brother was targeting him. He began to change. He was no longer the Emo Tianji of the past, because if he maintained his previous attitude, it would be equivalent to seeking death. His wisdom was also honed little by little in this kind of environment. However, compared to his big brother, who was 10 years older than him, he had always been the weaker one. Only in these 2 years, when his wisdom had matured, did he slowly reverse the situation. But now, because Emo Qingwu was close to him, she encountered this kind of thing. Nothing in this world is a coincidence. Emo Tianji had always believed in this saying. Coincidences are inevitable. Even if the Heiemo clan had the ability to reach the heavens, they would not know his whereabouts. But they had accurately grasped it and set up an ambush at the right time. Emo Tianji could not think of any other explanation for all of this. Emo Tianyun's early return was tantamount to a showdown with him. Or perhaps, he thought that his little sister's power had been eradicated, and that he was already victorious and the situation was already set? He was really gauging the stature of a great man with the yardstick of a villain. You should know that I have never thought of using my little sister's power to protect her. That is my little sister's power. I want to use my own power to defeat you fair and square. How can a person like you, who is used to scheming against others, understand my pride? Emo Tianji closed his eyes and sighed. Second young master, the clan head sent someone to inform you to attend the clan meeting. He said that there is an important decision. A voice interrupted Emo Tianji's thoughts. This news made Emo Tianji's body tremble violently. Chapter 200. And now Emo Qingwu's small body was curled up in the corner of her room. Her face was full of tears and her mouth was flat. She wanted to cry but did not dare to. She could only cry in her heart, "Brother Chu Yang, I'm so pitiful. They're all bullying me." Come quickly. In these past few days, Emo Qingwu sensitively felt that even the maids by her side were treating her differently from before. For the past few days, every time his mother saw him, she would hug him and cry, tears would flow out. She was full of sorrow and ignorance. Emo Qingwu faintly felt that something bad was about to happen to her. This was an ominous premonition, but she could not do anything. She opened her frightened eyes and blankly looked at these changes. It seemed that the only thing that could give her a sense of security was the saber in her hand, Brother Chu Yang's saber. The Emo clan's clan meeting finally began. When Emo Tianji walked into this hall, his heart suddenly sank. In the hall, incense smoke lingered. The ancestral tablets were brought out and placed on the incense table at the top. On the opposite seat, his father Emo Xingchan sat with a serious face. There were 4 chairs on both sides of the room. On each of the chairs sat a person from the spiritual basket. Some of them had white hair, some of them had white hair, and some of them had black hair and a youthful face. However, Emo Tianji knew that these people were about the same age. So, he couldn't tell anything from their appearances. Because these were the 8 great elders of the Emo clan. The 2 men closest to his father's seat were, in fact, the 2 ancestors with the highest cultivation and the most prestige in the family. Big brother Emo Tianyun was dressed in white and sat on the left side. Opposite him there was an empty seat. It was no doubt his own seat. Below the 2 of them there were 7 or 8 chairs. On them sat the clan members and important experts of the Emo clan. Everyone was silent. The atmosphere was very oppressive. Emo Tianji's heart sank to the bottom. Even the ancestral tablets were brought out. Obviously, Heaven Umbrella was going to make a big decision. And this decision was definitely related to Emo Qingwu. Little sister was not here yet. Emo Tianji slowly walked in with a gloomy face. He straightened his back and fixed his gaze on his father's face. He wanted to find a trace of warmth from his father's dignified face for his little sister. Emo Tianji was finally disappointed. Emo Xingchen's face was devoid of any expression. Only when his gaze met with his son, a sliver of sadness quietly flashed across his eyes. Emo Tianji sensitively captured this trace of sadness. He immediately stopped in front of his seat. He slowly turned around and faced Emo Tianyun. This was the person closest to him and his little sister. Blood was thicker than water. Emo Tianyun's eyes flashed with a trace of delight. Emo Tianji's eyes, however, flashed with a trace of coldness. Since you are heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. Emo Tianji didn't say anything. He slowly sat down on his seat. Only Emo Tianji and Emo Tianyun were wearing snow-white robes. The 2 of them were sitting opposite each other. They looked calm on the surface. However, everyone in the hall could clearly feel an aura surging between these 2 brothers when Emo Tianji sat down. Today, I've gathered everyone here because I have an important announcement to make. Emo Xingchen's 3 strands of long beard fluttered despite the lack of wind. His lips trembled slightly as he lightly shouted, "Bring Emo Qingwu up." Emo Tianji's pupils violently contracted. At the door, Emo Qingwu was led in by 2 female servants. She walked in fearfully and timidly. Her little face was deathly pale. In her arms, she was hugging a worn-out-looking saber. She hugged it so tightly that it was as if this saber was her only consolation. She stood alone in the middle of the hall. She looked at her father pitifully. Then she looked left and right timidly. Finally, her strong pleading gaze fell on her second brother's face. Her small lips trembled like a small blade of grass in the wind. Emo Tianji suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. He couldn't bear to look at his little sister's pitiful appearance. He sadly lowered his gaze. Emo Qingwu's eyes immediately filled with tears. She stared at Emo Tianji for a while before finally lowering her head. Emo Tianji wanted to say something, but he realized that his little sister had already lowered her head. Her soft hair covered her face. She looked so helpless. Emo Tianji didn't know that he lowered his head today because he couldn't bear to see his little sister's pitiful appearance. It wasn't that he didn't want to help her. But he neglected the fact that Mo Qingwu was at her weakest moment. She already knew the fate that she was about to face. Mo Tianji's lowering of his head was equivalent to completely destroying the last hope in Mo Qingwu's heart. This made Mo Qingwu stubbornly believe that in the entire Mo clan, except for her mother, no one else was good to her. Even her second brother, who was usually closest to her, didn't help her. This matter left a serious shadow in Mo Qingwu's heart. If Mo Tianji knew that Mo Qingwu had such a misunderstanding, he would probably hug his little sister in his arms even if he died. But he didn't know. Mo Qingwu's head was lowered. She just stared at the saber in her arms. It seemed that the saber still had Chu Yang's warmth. She couldn't even hear what the others were saying. Mo Xingqian sighed and said, Mo Qingwu was still a child. She insisted on going to the Mo clan's training. But because of this, she caused a big disaster. Everyone in the hall looked down and didn't say a word. They just listened quietly. The Mo clan's ambush caused Mo Qingwu to be seriously injured. The Mo Sword King's one-sword palace caused serious consequences. Mo Xingqian let out a heavy breath and said, Mo Qingwu's 3 meridian was completely destroyed. Without a doubt, this was the result of the Mo clan's elders' investigation. Suddenly, people in the hall started to whisper. Many people already knew about this matter, but there were still some who didn't know. In the 3 heavens, the weak are prey to the strong. Only with strong martial strength can one survive. Our Mo clan is founded on martial strength. We also value this point very much. The competition among the younger generation is also very cruel. But only with such cruel competition can we ensure that our Mo clan will continue to exist for a long time. Mo Xingqian's voice was very heavy. Therefore, our clan spared no effort in nurturing those who were talented, no matter if they were male or female. We didn't hesitate to raise their strength at all costs. Mo Qingwu has 3 meridian and is valued by the entire clan. All cultivation materials are given priority. Whether it is food, clothing, housing, or transportation, they are all better than their peers. For this reason, the clan has already worked hard for 7 years. Mo Xingqian's voice was a little hoarse as he said, but now Mo Qingwu's 3 meridian has been destroyed. So, the clan has decided to remove Mo Qingwu from her previous position. We will take revenge for the Mo clan. But with her 3 meridian destroyed, she will forever be a revered martial artist. Piling up a large amount of resources is already a waste. Mo Xingqian closed his eyes and looked at his daughter. A trace of pity flashed through his eyes. After the joint research of the clan and the elders, we will definitely wait. Mo Tianji calmly raised his hand and interrupted him. Father, I have something to say. What is it that you have to say that you have to interrupt father's announcement? Mo Tianyun sat on the opposite side and slowly said, Second brother, I beg of you, before you speak in front of the ancestral tablets in front of so many people, please think about saving some face for our father. Mo Tianyun, you are so vicious. Mo Tianji completely gave up on this big brother of his at this moment. Mo Tianyun's words were neither fast nor slow, but it put him in the most awkward position. Moreover, with this sentence in front of him, the first impression was the strongest. No matter what he said, it would be greatly discounted. What words? Speak. Mo Xingqian's face darkened. Little sister's injury is not incurable. Mo Tianji said, in the lower 3 heavens, I once met a strange person. He once said that if he was given a year's time, he would be able to prepare the medicine to reconnect little sister's 3 meridian. I can swear on my life that this is not a lie. A strange person in the lower 3 heavens? Mo Xingqian's voice was a little strange. In the hall, many people's faces revealed mocking smiles. Do you know that these few days 2 elders and I went to the upper 3 heavens? Mo Xingqian was a little angry. He was very dissatisfied with his son's careless words. We found the drug god. When he heard about the 3 meridian being destroyed, he returned all the gifts we sent. Drug god, the number 1 doctor in the upper 3 heavens. His medical skills were superb. However, he had a strange rule. He only treated 1 person in a day. Even so, the medicine god valley was still as busy as a marketplace. Everyone was horrified. Everyone was even a little surprised. The clan master actually found the drug god for his daughter's injury. How much did he have to pay? Everyone knew why the drug god returned the gifts. That was because the drug god could not do anything about Mo Qingwu's injury. Even the drug god could not do it. You found a strange person in the lower three heavens to treat her? It's fine if you speak carelessly, but you actually used your own life to guarantee it. This was what made Mo Xingchen the most dissatisfied. I also know that this matter is difficult to convince, but, Father, please believe me this once. Mo Tianji straightened his body and said resolutely. Mo Xingchen was silent. Haha, yes, second brother. Little sister is injured. Every one of us is burning with anxiety. Every one of us is in great pain. Do you think you are the only one who is sad? Mo Tunyun sighed. But the truth is the truth. Even the drug god could not do anything, but you say a doctor in the lower three heavens can? Second brother. This is a clan meeting. Don't be unreasonable. Mo Tianji's handsome face suddenly turned red. At this moment, the last bit of brotherly affection in his heart disappeared without a trace. He could not wait to strangle Mo Tianyun. Too insidious. How could he do this to his own little brother and little sister? Alright, you don't have to say anything. Mo Xingchen shouted. Mo Tianji still wanted to say something, but the black-robed elder at the top slowly opened his eyes and looked at Mo Tianji. Tianji, if you say one more word, there will be no place for you here. Chapter 201. In the depths of Mo Tianyun's eyes, a trace of pride and schadenfreude flashed. Obviously, Mo Tianji's careless words had angered the elder. Mo Tianji stood quietly for a while, then sat down without a word. His face was still calm, but the coldness in his eyes was getting heavier and heavier. Mo Tianji wanted to leave, but once he left, no one would speak up for his little sister. So he still sat down. The clan has decided. Mo Xingchen looked at Mo Tianji with some blame and said, First, Mo Qingwu's cultivation resources will be revoked. From today onwards, she will be sent as a normal disciple. Second, Mo Qingwu's right to inherit the Red Dust Pavilion will be revoked. The Red Dust Pavilion will be inherited by another outstanding female disciple. Third, Mo Qingwu's position as a core disciple of the clan will be revoked. Fourth, Mo Qingwu's right to live in the inner court will be revoked. From today onwards, she will move out of the inner court. Fifth, all her benefits will be revoked. The clan will deal with her separately. Sixth, revoked. With each announcement, Mo Tianji's face became redder and redder. Then it turned pale. His hands clenched into fists, and his fingernails dug deep into his flesh. Mo Qingwu stood with her head lowered, looking at the saber in her arms, as if she did not hear anything. For a young girl like her, this kind of punishment was too cruel. Every announcement of her father's decision was like a clap of thunder. A series of explosions in her head. It shook her until she was dizzy, as if the whole world had left her at this moment. Father. Mo Tianji finally could not help but stand up fiercely. I have something important to report. Mo Tianji's voice interrupted Mo Xingchen's words once again. As a scheming person, Mo Tianji clearly knew the consequences of his actions. But at this moment, for the sake of his younger sister, he decided to go all out. He did not know and was not sure if it would be good or bad for him to speak of this matter now. Would it cause more harm to his little sister? He had seriously considered this issue before, and thought that it was better not to speak of it. But now he changed his mind. If he did not speak now, his little sister would be finished when his father finished announcing it. Her life would be ruined. Even though Mo Tianji was not certain, and even though he was willing to take a risk, Mo Tianji would rather risk it all. This was the first time in Mo Tianji's life that he had done something that he wasn't sure of. What important favor. This time, Mo Xingchen opened his mouth before anyone could berate him. Although his voice was gloomy, it made Mo Tianji happy. This was the only opportunity that his father had fought for him in front of the family's interests. I won't be able to say anything if the elders open their mouths first and everyone attacks me together. I don't know if father has noticed. The saber in Xiao Wu's hand? Mo Tianji clenched his teeth and hardened his heart. Then he finally spoke. He originally wanted to keep this saber a secret and let his little sister keep it for self-defense. However, at this moment, this saber had become Emo Qingwu's biggest bargaining chip. As long as the family values this saber, then his little sister's position would not be too awkward. At the very least, he could change the environment for his younger sister, to preserve some of the benefits. As for the saber, it would never break. Emo Tianji had already decided. If it was really the worst outcome, then one day he would take back this saber for his little sister. However, the most important thing now was not this saber, but a chance for his little sister to breathe. A chance for her to grow. This saber? Emo Xingchen asked doubtfully. Yes, this saber was given to Xiao Wu by the benefactor who saved her. Emo Tianji said deeply. This saber is an ancient treasure saber. It is a peerless treasure saber. Moreover, this saber's name is Dreaming of a Gentle Dance Saber. It is also heaven's will for it to fall into Xiao Wu's hands. Emo Tianji's words were not very clear, but once he said it, everyone understood what he meant. This saber is an ancient treasure saber, but it has Emo Qingwu's name on it. This is a coincidence and also heaven's favor. How could a person blessed by heaven become a useless person? For a moment, everyone's gaze was on Emo Qingwu. However, Emo Qingwu suddenly raised her head and looked at Emo Tianji. She was completely in disbelief. Why did second brother mention this saber? Don't you know that this saber is the only thing I can keep now? Xiao Wu, let me see your saber. After Emo Tianji finished speaking, Emo Qingwu still stood there indifferently. Emo Xingchen could not help but say. Emo Qingwu's mind was in a mess, and she felt that everything was so unreal. Her father, who used to adore her, had suddenly become a stranger. Her ancestors, who used to adore her, no longer seemed to recognize her. Even her second brother, who had always been the closest to her, did not dare to look at her. Furthermore, he had even revealed her biggest secret at her current age. She still did not know that if she was really stripped of everything according to her father's announcement, her status in this clan would fall from the peak to the bottom. She would not even be comparable to a maid in the side room. As for the words that followed, she did not hear them. Her entire person had collapsed. Although she was still here, she could no longer think or move. Little sister, give me the saber. Emo Tianji walked in front of her, squatted down and said softly, let father see. As he spoke, he reached out to take the saber in Emo Qingwu's hand. When he reached out, his palms were already full of sweat. This saber was his little sister's favorite, and it was also her only hope at present. He did not know what would happen after she took it out. But no matter what, this was the last step in front of him. Feeling that someone was snatching the saber in her hand, Emo Qingwu instinctively tightened her grip. Then she fiercely hugged herself and screamed, don't snatch my saber. Don't snatch my saber. With a scream, her eyes and face were full of tears. Tears flowed down her jade-like cheeks and dripped onto the ground. Emo Tianji's heart ached. He said, little sister, I'm not trying to snatch your saber. It's father who wants to see it. Emo Qingwu hugged Dreaming of a Gentle Dance Saber tightly. Her eyes were full of fear. Don't snatch my saber. Brother Chuyang gave it to me. Xiao Wu. Emo Xingchen shouted, give it to me. Emo Qingwu only felt numb all over. The next moment, the saber was already in Emo Xingchen's hand. Once the saber was in his hand, Emo Xingchen was shocked, because this saber was as light as a feather. My saber. Emo Qingwu shouted. Emo Qingwu screamed. Suddenly, she looked at her empty hands in a daze, and tears fell down her cheeks in a pitter-patter. The next moment, Emo Xingchen reached out. With a swoosh, the saber was unsheathed. The whole hall was shrouded in red light. In the red light, starlight twinkled. More than 30 people in the hall stood up at the same time. Good saber. Just by looking at the dazzling red light, one could tell that this saber was definitely a peerless divine item. There was actually someone who would give such a saber to an ignorant little girl for her to play with. At this moment, everyone in the Emo clan had the same thought. Could it be that this person was an idiot? Xingchen, is this saber very light? The voice of the elder who scolded Emo Tianji just now was trembling. His eyes were fixed on the saber, emitting a dazzling light. This elder was called Emo Wu Exine. He was the only remaining elder of the Emo clan, and also one of the emperor-level martial artists. Yes, the entire saber is no more than 4 ounces. Mo Xingqian held the saber as if he didn't feel anything at all. No more than 4 ounces. Mo Wuxian sucked in a breath of cold air and said impatiently, "Let me see." The next moment, Mo Wuxian caressed the saber very carefully. His pale face suddenly flushed red. He murmured, "It is indeed red cloud steel." And Xingqian, no. Mo Wuxian frowned and checked carefully. Then he said in shock, "Red cloud steel essence. Star iron essence." He casually grabbed the saber from the waist of a Mo clan expert at the door. With a swoosh, the saber flew over. Then, he held the saber with one hand and raised the saber high in the air with the other hand. Then he let go. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the sheathed sword landed lightly on the saber's blade. With a soft sound, it broke into 2 and fell to the ground with a clang. The hall was dead silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the saber. How could the saber of a clan expert be ordinary? But it fell without any resistance. It was like a knife cutting through tofu. It didn't even make a sound before it broke. And it was sheathed. Just how sharp was this saber? There had never been such a divine weapon in the Heaven Layer continent. This was a priceless treasure. Gently tilting the saber, Mo Wuxian whispered, dreaming of a gentle dance, overturning the mortal world. Overturning the mortal world. This saber is indeed overturning the mortal world. Xingqian, this saber is definitely the #1 treasure saber in the Heaven Layer continent. Mo Wuxian looked at the saber lovingly. Such a treasure saber has come to our Mo clan. It is a great fate. You must take good care of it. As he spoke, he returned the saber to its sheath and reluctantly handed it to Mo Xingqian. This saber was given to little sister by that benefactor. Mo Tianji took a breath and said, "That benefactor said that this saber only belongs to little sister. Little sister is the owner of this saber." Mo Tianji said seriously. Everyone understood what he meant. This saber belonged to Mo Qingwu, and it was given to Mo Qingwu by the benefactor of the Mo clan. It only belonged to Mo Qingwu. It could not belong to anyone else. No one is allowed to spread the news that this saber is in the Mo clan. Mo Wuxian's eyes flashed as he looked at everyone's face seriously. Everyone nodded in unison. Their eyes were burning. Everyone knew what such a treasured saber meant. The treasure saber had been returned to its sheath. But the amazing scene just now had been engraved in everyone's minds forever. Only belongs to Xiaowu? Mo Xingqian frowned. Such a treasure saber in the hands of a child with no future. Was it not a great waste and a great risk? Chapter 202. I don't want to threaten the clan. I only hope that my little sister can live a better life. Mo Tianji took a step forward and knelt in front of Mo Xingqian. "Father, please take into account that Xiaowu is the owner of this saber. Please protect Xiaowu well. As long as this saber was in Mo Qingwu's hands, the clan's protection for Mo Qingwu would be far greater than before. Even though she still could not have the original cultivation resources, Mo Qingwu's situation would be much better. In the heavenly realm, kindness was valued, filial piety was valued, and friendship was valued. These were the mainstream of morality. If one was not an ungrateful person, one would never give away something given by a benefactor. This was a matter of principle. This was also Mo Tianji's greatest confidence in taking this risk. It was also his greatest desire. His greatest desire. Mo Xingqian's eyes showed struggle and contradiction. The whispers in the hall suddenly grew louder. Everyone was whispering to each other. "Second brother, you are too naive. Do you really think that little sister has the ability to keep this saber?" Mo Danyun sneered. "You put this saber in little sister's hands. Do you love her or do you want to harm her? What do you mean?" Mo Tianji said coldly, "This is father's decision. Father has not made a decision yet. What nonsense are you spouting? Don't tell me, you want to covet your own sister's saber? I am not that despicable." Mo Tianyun sneered and turned to Mo Xingqian. "Father, I think that this saber cannot be put in little sister's hands. Little sister is young. She does not have the ability to keep this saber. If this saber is placed in her hands, it will instead bring her a fatal disaster." Mo Tianyun said, "When the time comes, not only will little sister be in danger, this saber will also fall into the hands of the enemy, and become a great weapon against our Emo clan. It will bring great disaster to our Emo clan. Emo Xingchun was silent. Father, can you bear to see little sister not only be crippled but also be in danger because of a saber? Emo Tuanyun said sincerely and worriedly, Father, please reconsider. Emo Tuanyun, you are talking nonsense. As long as the family strengthens the protection of little sister, how could little sister be harmed? Emo Tianji angrily said, moreover, this saber is a gift from our benefactor. Do you want our Emo clan to become a heartless and ungrateful clan? Ungrateful? Humph. Emo Tianji, if you don't take responsibility for your benefactor's gift, then you are truly ungrateful. Emo Tianyun gave tit for tat and said, moreover, how do you explain the words ruthless and unintentional? Could it be that you think that our Emo clan is heartless? Emo Tunji sneered and said, who is the heartless one? Who is the ungrateful one? Everyone knows in their hearts. Emo Tuanyun, you are forcing your own little sister like this. She's only a year and a half, but her 3-yin meridian is already crippled. I'm trying to protect her. Emo Tuanyun angrily said, Emo Tianji, you shouldn't think of other people in this way. Everyone in this hall is as loyal to the family as you are to Xiao Wu. But don't forget that little sister's name is on that saber. This is heaven's will. Emo Tianji said coldly, you want to go against heaven's will? Everyone's expression changed. Go against heaven's will. Since ancient times the word heaven had always been supreme. Who dared to offend it? That's just a coincidence. Emo Tianyun sneered, just like my name. You can find the words Tianyun in many ancient books. There are even records of this from 10,000 years ago. If that's the case, then am I not following heaven's will? Following heaven's will? Are you worthy? Emo Tianji was furious. The two elders were at each other's throats. Their eyes were shining. Even Emo Tianji, who was known for his calmness, had an ominous glint in his eyes. The two brothers were going at it in front of the clan master, all the clan elders, in front of everyone in the clan, and in front of the ancestral tablets. It was on the verge of breaking out. Enough. Zhan Xingchan slammed the table and angrily said, are the two of you rebelling? Do you still have any sense of shame for your brothers to engage in such a filthy act in front of everyone? Both of you sit down. Emo Tianji and Emo Tianyun looked at each other fiercely. They both snorted and sat back down. Old ancestor, this saber. Emo Xingchun probed. This saber is a priceless treasure. How can it be in the hands of a useless little girl? Emo Wu Exine rolled his eyes and said lightly, you are the clan master. Don't tell me, you don't know how to make a decision for such a thing? Elder. Emo Tianji almost didn't dare to believe his ears. How can my ancestor say such words? No need to say more. Emo Wu Exine snorted and said, we have no choice. If Emo Qing Wu wasn't crippled, there's nothing wrong with her having this saber. But she has no future now. Do you want to keep the best resources? This saber was given to Emo Qing Wu by our benefactor. But no matter what, Emo Qing Wu is still a member of the Emo clan. In other words, this was given to the Emo clan by our benefactor. So, how is it ungrateful for the Emo clan to keep it? Emo Wu Exine rolled his eyes and looked at Emo Tianji with a disdainful sneer in his eyes. Tianji, do you have any objections to what this old man has just said? Yes, I have a big objection. Emo Tianji suddenly stood up. He also didn't know why he was so impulsive today. This saber doesn't belong to the Emo clan. It belongs to my little sister. Emo Qing Wu. Impudent. Emo Wu Exine raised his hand and slapped Emo Tianji's face. He said coldly, get out. Father. Emo Tianji gritted his teeth and looked at Emo Xingchan with grief and indignation. Get out. Emo Wu Exine raised his hand and a strong wind suddenly rolled up. Emo Tianji was thrown out with a whoosh. Emo Tianji fell to the ground with a thud. He shouted, this saber belongs to my little sister. Our Emo clan can't do such a thing. Elder father, please reconsider. This will make the world laugh at us. Shut him up. Emo Wu Exine said coldly. Emo Tuanyun said yes. Then he waved his hand and the two of them walked out. Immediately, Emo Tianji shouted from outside. You will regret this. Then there was a whimper and there was no movement outside. Emo Qingwu, the clan will preserve this saber for you. Are you willing? Emo Wu Exine looked at the young Emo Qingwu indifferently. But that's mine. Emo Qingwu looked at Emo Wu Exine timidly. She bit her lips and tried not to cry out loud. Impudent. Are you not a member of the Emo clan? Emo Wu Exine waved his sleeves. This matter is settled. As compensation, Emo Qingwu can keep a little of her old living conditions. Emo Xingchan sighed and said, As you wish, elder. That's my saber. Emo Qingwu stood stubbornly. She bit her lips and said in a small but determined voice, Mine. Brother Chuyang gave it to me. But no one paid attention to her. It was given by a benefactor. If this benefactor was a supermaster from upper three heavens, the situation would be different. But he was from lower three heavens. Why would the big clans of upper three heavens care about a so-called extraordinary person from lower three heavens? Emo Xingchan sighed and said, Send Miss back. Father. Emo Qingwu suddenly wailed and curled up on the ground. She said in despair, Give me back my saber. Emo Xingchen's face was ashen. The corners of his eyes were slightly trembling, but he did not speak. Two servants came forward and helped Emo Qingwu up. Miss, we should go back. I want my saber. Emo Qingwu's eyes suddenly became empty. She looked at her father and murmured, My saber. Take her back. Emo Wu Exine shouted. Then he waved his sleeves and disappeared without a trace. The two servants carefully used their strength to lift Emo Qingwu up and walked out. My saber. My saber. Emo Qingwu's feet left the ground and she was carried out. She struggled fiercely and cried, Father. Father, even if you don't return my saber, can you give me the scabbard? I just want the scabbard, okay? Okay. Ooh. The crying became louder and louder. Emo Xingchan sighed. With a schwa sound, the saber came out of the scabbard. Then he shook his hand and the scabbard turned into a dragon and flew out. It fell right into Emo Qingwu's arms. Emo Qingwu's eyes lit up. She tightly hugged the scabbard and closed her eyes. Then she pressed her tender little face against the scabbard. Her tears gushed out like a fountain. Her little heart was filled with pain. Brother Chuyang. I'm sorry. I lost the saber you gave me, Brother Chuyang. I miss you so much. I'm so pitiful. Her little heart suddenly recalled that night when Chuyang held her little face in his hands and said softly, Xiaowu. You have to remember this. If one day, no one likes you anymore, Brother Chuyang will still like you. Brother Chuyang. Emo Qingwu cried sadly. She cried very hard, seeing Emo Qingwu leave. Emo Tianyun's eyes suddenly became fiery. He looked at the saber in Emo Xingchen's hand. Father, this saber. It's better if you don't have any ideas about this saber. Emo Xingchen said lightly. Yes. Emo Tianyun lowered his head. Emo Xingchen looked at his eldest son quietly. After a long time he sighed and said, I'm here. As a person in power, it's not a bad thing to be ruthless. This is a necessary trait for a person in power. But, Emo Xingchen was silent for a while and said, But in this world, there are still some things. It's not good to completely abandon them. Emo Tianyun was silent for a long time and said, Father, I will remember. Chapter 203. Emo Tianyun took a deep breath and did not speak. Emo Xingchen stood for a while and looked at him with a complicated gaze. He said, In a few days I will send Tianji to Conglan battlefront. As for you, you will continue to train in lower three heavens. Try your best to find the whereabouts of the Master of Calamity Sword. You will be separated. Do you understand? I understand. Emo Tianyun puffed out his chest. It's good that you understand. Emo Xingchen took the saber and turned to leave. Emo Tianyun bowed his head respectfully and watched his father leave. He was the only one left in the hall. He slowly raised his head and revealed a feminine smile. He muttered, Father, what I understand is, my position is very dangerous. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Strike later. And it's over. Conglan battlefront is far away. But it's still in this world. Emo Tianyun smiled and shook his head. Blood ties. Haha. In this world who doesn't have blood ties? Aren't we all children of this world? If that's the case, isn't this world fratricidal every day? Fratricidal, you have to treat each other as your own for it to be fratricidal. But in reality, fratricidal will not fratricidal. Since you treat each other as your own, how can you fratricidal? Mo Tianyun smiled gently. Only when you don't treat each other as your own can you fratricidal. He revealed a very bright smile and walked out with his hands behind his back. When he was about to leave, he turned around and looked at the chair his father was sitting on. He smiled slightly. All of Mo Qingwu's privileges were revoked. She only retained the right to stay in the inner courtyard. She could stay by his mother's side in the inner courtyard. This was the only privilege that dreaming of a gentle dance saber got. After Mo Tianji knew about this, he laughed bitterly. His voice was mournful and his smile was tragic. At this moment he suddenly remembered something. In lower three heavens, the night before he left with Chu Yang. Don't force me to fight with your Mo clan. Chu Yang said lightly. If I know that Xiao Wu has been wronged, your Mo clan must give me an explanation. Brother Mo is too polite. This saber is just a token of my sincerity. Of course there is a deeper meaning. Not everyone is worthy of my efforts. Chu Yang said bluntly, Brother Mo, you can just think with your heart. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly as he recalled Chu Yang's words. He had a vague premonition that the Mo clan snatching of Mo Qingwu's Xing and Qingwu saber and Mo Qingwu's current treatment would cause a huge commotion. Mo Tianji thought about Chu Yang's serious expression when he said those words. Mo Tianji felt a faint sense of danger slowly approaching the Mo clan. Thinking of Chu Yang's brothers, Gu Duxing, Luo Kudiji Mo Dongwu Shang. Mo Tianji heaved a long sigh. He didn't mention Chu Yang's name in the meeting. If he did, it would only make Mo Tianyun laugh at him. That was because these people were all dukes in their respective clans. None of them were valued as heirs. But on that day, Mo Tianji saw the potential of these people. Since Chu Yang had integrated them together, this was an incomparably terrifying force. However, this power needed space. It needed space to grow. If Mo Tianyun knew about this, he would have countless methods to disperse these people and attack them. Therefore, Mo Tianji didn't say anything. He wanted to give these people space. Because what Chu Yang and the others wanted to do was what he wanted to do. In these few days, Madame Mo had been watching over her daughter closely. Although her daughter's talent had been destroyed, she was still her precious baby. Madame Mo couldn't go against the clan's decision. Moreover, the Mo clan had always been so cruel. Everyone was already used to it. However, this didn't stop Madame Mo from caring for her daughter. She was only worried that her daughter was so young. How could she bear such a blow? However, she realized that her daughter had changed. That lively and cute Xiao Wu who loved to talk and laugh was gone. What replaced her was a quiet and pitiful little girl who didn't talk much. She just hugged that shabby scabbard all day long and didn't speak a word. At such a young age, there was more and more sadness and calmness on her face. Sometimes, this little girl would hold her chin and stare at a certain place. Her eyes were full of thoughts. However, every time she thought, there was more sadness in her eyes. Mo Onwu naturally didn't have lovesickness at her age. Most of her thoughts had nothing to do with Chu Yang. However, it was these thoughts that slowly sealed her heart. Why is it like this? Although Ahua is a servant, I used to call her Sister Ahua. When her mother was sick, I stole medicine from the clan and cured her. That day, she said that she had to treat me well. However, from that day on, Ahua ignored me when she saw me. When I heard her talking to Sister Xiaoyu, she even called me trash. Why? Father used to carry me in circles every time he came back. However, from that day on, he didn't. Moreover, when he saw me, he turned around and walked away. When he couldn't avoid me, he pulled a long face. Did Xiao Wu really make father hate me? That day when I wanted to get some medicine, I went to the clan pharmacy. However, they didn't give it to me. I remember that when I asked for medicine, they would give it to me. Why? Because I became trash? That day in the hall, second brother didn't dare to look at me. The saber that brother Chu Yang gave me. Mo Qingwu thought like this. At such a young age, she actually had a lot on her mind. Her body also became thinner and thinner. Madame Mo saw this and her heart ached. This day, Mo Tianji received a notice from the clan to go to the Zhonglan battlefront. Before leaving, he came to say goodbye to his little sister. At the Zhonglan battlefront, When he arrived, he saw Emo Qingwu sitting on the doorstep with her chin in her hands. Her eyes were blank and empty. There was no spirit in them at all. Emo Tianji's heart ached. He gently came to his little sister and squatted down. Xiao Wu's second brother is here. Oh Xiao, what happened to you? Nothing. Xiao Wu, I have to go to the Zhonglan battlefront. Oh, before leaving I am a little worried about you. What do you want? Second brother will bring it back for you? Oh Xiao Wu. Emo Tianji was heartbroken. He grabbed Emo Qingwu's thin shoulders and shook. Say something. Suddenly he was shocked. Why did you lose so much weight? Emo Qingwu's lifeless eyes finally turned around. Second brother? Yes, second brother is here. Second brother. Have I really become a cripple? Nonsense. Emo Tianji immediately got angry. Who told you that? They all said so. Is it true? Emo Tianji was speechless. He hugged his little sister tightly. Little sister, you will be fine. You will not become a cripple. You don't want me anymore. Emo Qingwu sobbed. Emo Tianji was stunned. I have nothing left. Uncle Chengyu is also gone. You are also going to go. Second brother, can I still get my saber back? When the saber was mentioned, Emo Qingwu's eyes suddenly shone with hope. Yes, second brother, why did you take out my saber that day? Emo Qingwu raised her head. At such a young age, her eyes were originally innocent and bright. However, there was an additional sense of scrutiny in them. Emo Tianji was speechless. What could he say to his little sister? Could he explain? When you took out my saber, it was snatched away. Emo Qingwu's voice was very soft. It was so soft that it was a little fleeting. Emo Tianji sighed deeply. At this moment he knew where his mistake was. If he did not take out the saber, Emo Qingwu's situation would be even worse than it was now. This saber could at least be exchanged for a more peaceful environment. At least this was the inner courtyard. The rules of the inner courtyard were strict. The servants did not dare to say anything. Emo Qingwu would also be very safe here. Moreover, her mother was here. With her mother's protection, Emo Qingwu would not be wronged. This was perhaps the biggest gain. However, Emo Tianji neglected one point. After Emo Qingwu was stripped of all her original rights, in her young heart, there was only one person she could rely on. Chu Yang. Because the entire Emo clan decided her fate. They let her fall into this helpless and sorrowful situation. However, Chu Yang had once saved her from the brink of death. He even played with her and gave her a saber that she liked very much. When she suffered such a heavy blow, in the heart of the little girl, the time she spent with Chu Yang seemed to be even happier. Comparing the two, naturally Chu Yang was the good guy. After suffering such a heavy blow, the most precious thing to Emo Qingwu now was that memory and that saber. Only that saber could give her warmth at this time. However, Emo Tianji brought it out in exchange for an environment to live in this life. The moment he took out that saber, it was equivalent to taking away the pillar of Emo Qingwu's little heart. It caused her to be physically and mentally injured. She could not bear it. This was Emo Tianji's biggest mistake. Because to Emo Qingwu, she was still young and did not understand the value of this exchange. To her, such an exchange did not make her feel anything, because she originally lived here. Now she still lived here. She only felt that she had lost her favorite saber. And this saber was lost because of Emo Tianji. Perhaps she would understand Emo Tianji's painstaking efforts in the future. However, she definitely would not understand now. Emo Tianji stood there in a daze. At this moment, even though he was extremely intelligent and cunning, he was still at his wits' end. Because in front of him was only a little girl. A little girl who did not know the ways of the world. No matter what reason, as long as she believed in it, he could not explain it. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and said, "Little Wu, don't worry. There will be a day when second brother will take your saber back and deliver it to you. Will you?" Emo Qingwu raised her head and looked at Emo Tianji with sparkling eyes. After a long time, her eyes dimmed little by little. She said desolately, "Second brother, I am tired." After she finished speaking, she lowered her head and ignored her second brother. She looked at her feet in confusion. Her eyes were unfocused. She muttered, "I miss brother Chu Yang so much." When Emo Tianji left the backyard, Even he himself did not know how to describe his feelings. He only knew that he wanted to kill someone. The most ideal target was Emo Tianyun. Recommended a new book. My brother Ao Yu Chongkong's new book, Endless Online Game. Those who are interested, please go and take a look. By chance, Li Hao discovered that he could cultivate in the game and in reality at the same time. This accidental discovery made Li Hao's life extraordinary. Chapter 204. Emo Tianyun, I will never let you go. When I return from Conglan battlefront. Emo Tianyun, just you wait. Emo Tianji finally left. He wanted to have a long talk with his father before he left, but Emo Xingchan did not have the time. Or it could be said that he purposely did not want to see him. Seeing that the day of departure had arrived, Emo Tianji gave up on this effort. He knew that his father would not see him. When he left, Emo Tianyun actually came to see him off on behalf of the clan. The two brothers faced each other without saying a word. The group that left with Emo Tianji quietly waited outside the door for them to say goodbye. Standing at the very front was a female knight with a slim figure. At this moment, the female knight was looking at Emo Tianyun. Let's talk here. Emo Tianji bit his lips and walked to the side with Emo Tianyun. Second brother, I wish you a safe journey. Emo Tianyun smiled as he walked. He was very proud. Do you have something to say to me? Nothing. I just want to tell you one thing. Emo Tianji was silent for a while. Finally, he said in a low voice, Emo Tianyun, listen carefully. What did you call me? Emo Tianyun was furious. Listen carefully. Emo Tianji's expression was cold. His voice was even lower. 3 years ago, when Lan Meigu was under my command, I knew that she was one of your people. Emo Tianyun was shocked. You. Quiet. Emo Tianji smiled cruelly. I not only know that she is one of your people, but I also know that you are madly in love with her. Emo Tianyun, I also know that she once gave birth to a son for you. However, you did not get married, so you had to secretly hide him. Emo Tianyun's face was pale. The corners of his eyes twitched. You like this woman and your son very much. The little guy is very cute. I also like him very much. Emo Tianji licked his lips and said, Emo Tianyun, remember this. If Xiao Wu is wronged in the days that I am not here, you should prepare to go to the red light district to find your woman. I will definitely label him as Emo Tianyun. At that time, I believe that your enemies will be very interested. Emo Tianyun's face lost its color with a schwa sound. Red Light Restaurant was a very famous brothel in the upper three heavens. It was also a money-squandering establishment for the younger generation of aristocratic clans. Emo Tianyun liked a woman, but he could not give her up. However, it also depended on how he gave her up. If Emo Tianji sold her to a money-squandering establishment, the humiliation alone would drive Emo Tianyun crazy. Emo Tianji admired his expression and slowly said, And your Zhou? He has been with his mother since he was born. I guarantee he will also live well. A trace of madness flashed across Emo Tianji's handsome face. He gently smiled. I didn't want to do this to you. But, do you understand now? Emo Tianyun's eyes suddenly turned blood red. Emo Tianji, do you want to fight me to the death? Xiao Wu is not a fish. Emo Tianji insipidly said, Don't look for him. Your son is no longer in his original place. Don't worry. As long as Xiao Wu is safe, they will be safe as well. But he is still your nephew. Emo Tianyun roared in a low voice. You don't treat me as a brother. Do you think I will treat him as a nephew? Emo Tianji warmly smiled. Emo Tianyun, why are you always so naive? After he finished speaking, Emo Tianji took a step back and coldly looked at Emo Tianyun. He retreated 1 step at a time until he took 5 steps back. Then he suddenly extended a finger and pointed at Emo Tianyun's nose. He pointed at the air twice and casually said, Big brother, remember my words. I don't want any unpleasantness. Do you understand? After he finished speaking, he suddenly turned around and shouted, Let's go. He jumped on his horse and laughed loudly. The 300 cavalry rushed into the cold wind like a black cloud and suddenly sped away. They did not look back. That Lan Mei knight looked back before she left. She saw Emo Tianyun's ashen face, but she did not have time to react. She followed the cavalry and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Mo Tianyun stood at the door. The muscles on his face twitched. After a long time he suddenly punched the door. The entire door was smashed into pieces by his punch. He gasped for breath. His eyes flashed with unwillingness. He said in a low voice, "Pass down my order. Cancel all operations in the inner courtyard." Grand Duke? The guard behind heard this and could not help but be surprised. "Do as I say." Mo Tianyun suddenly turned around and roared, "Are you deaf?" The guard was so scared that his face turned pale. He quickly complied and turned around to leave. Zhen Tianyun gasped for breath. His eyes shot out crazy hatred. "Mo Tianji, I will kill you." Mo Tianji, who was far away, had a complicated look on his face. He did not want to use this method. But now he was forced by the situation. He had to use it. Snatching Lan Mei was Mo Tianji's plan 3 years ago. From then on, the struggle between the two brothers became intense. Mo Tianyun was very proud that Mo Tianji did not know Lan Mei's identity. Lan Mei was in Mo Tianji's hands. It was like he had a super spy. But he never thought that the reason Mo Tianji snatched Lan Mei was because of her identity. He was preparing for this step. At this moment, using this method to deal with Mo Tianyun was an eye for an eye. Mo Tianji left. Mo Qingwu in the inner courtyard became even more lonely. Every day, she hugged that broken scabbard. Even when she slept, she hugged it tightly. It was as if only this broken scabbard could give her the only comfort in her heart. The sadness on her little face made people's hearts ache. "Scabbard, do you miss Dao Dao? Scabbard, do you miss Brother Chu Yang? Scabbard, do you want to leave here? Scabbard, I only have you to accompany me. Brother Chu Yang, when will you come?" During this period of time, Chu Yang's strength training had also reached a certain level. Luo Kadi and Rui Butong broke through one after another. Luo Kadi ranked 5th. Rui Butong sullenly ranked last with a small gap of 1 hour. This month, the responsibility of washing underwear and socks fell on the shoulders of Rui Butong, the future lone thief. Rui Butong now had a bitter face every day. Gu Duxing and Chu Yang were better, but Luo Kadi and GMO were not polite at all. Every day, their socks were worn into mud before they were thrown into Rui Butong's bed. In Butong was almost suffocated to death. Especially GMO and Luo Kadi, who were proud of their success, swaggered in front of him every day. "Come old man, call me third brother. Come old man, call me fifth brother. Good boy, come, old man, have you finished washing your socks? Third brother will give you some pointers on martial arts. Come, old man, have you finished washing your socks? Fifth brother will exchange pointers with you." Rui Butong fell into a state of continuous mental and physical attacks. Under the ravaging of the two, Rui Butong's power soared. And Chu Yang's state during this period of time also made the other 4 speechless. This guy was cultivating without any regard for his life. After breaking through to level 3 martial master, he actually started to challenge those of a higher level. Starting from Rui Butong, the 4 of them had to spar with Chu Yang at least 5 times a day. And Chu Yang's request was that they must not hold back. As a result, almost every sparring session was a complete and utter abuse. But no matter how badly this guy was beaten, in less than an hour, he would jump up energetically for the next round. Such a terrifying endurance made the 4 of them tremble in fear as they fought. Although he was able to torture his boss every single time, this kind of undying spirit was too ruthless. The 4 of them asked themselves if they were in his shoes, they would definitely not be able to endure it. And Chu Yang seemed to be improving every time. Every time he used his body movement technique, his strength realm, he could actually give the 4 of them a whole new feeling. The 4 of them had never seen or heard of such a freak before. Chu Yang was also in great pain because he gave up on going out to challenge. He completely used Gu Duxing and the other 3 to experience the feeling. But these 4 people are now high-level martial great masters. Every time Chu Yang felt a great pressure, and his realm and understanding also rapidly improved under this huge pressure. The speed of his improvement made Gu Duxing and the others realize what was called terrifying. In half a month, Chu Yang had forcibly raised his cultivation by 4 levels. He was now at the peak of level 7 martial master. There were many realms that he had comprehended in his previous life, so he leveled up relatively quickly. But even so, it was too sensational. And what made Gu Duxing and the others feel the most uncomfortable was that Chu Yang's new tactics were slowly taking shape. Especially the soft water force that he had comprehended earlier. It was now slowly fusing into his moves and techniques. This kind of fighting style was very difficult to deal with. If it was not for the fact that his cultivation was much higher, a level 2 or 3 martial greatmaster would definitely fall at his hands. There was no suspense at all. Under Chu Yang's pursuit, Gu Duxing, Luo Kudi and the others deeply felt this huge pressure. If someone started chasing them from level 3 martial warrior and actually caught up to level 7 or 8 martial greatmaster, that would be too shameful. As a result, the 4 of them started to play with their lives at the same time. The days were very dull, and just like that, the days passed by. The weather was getting colder and colder. Butian Pavilion also became more restrained. Besides continuing to train, accept new people, and secretly set up an intelligence network, they did not do anything else in the country. Tai Butian had just ascended the throne, and everything was waiting to be done. He was extremely busy and did not have time to go to Butian Pavilion. In the eyes of the Iron Cloud public, Butian Pavilion seemed to have quieted down. In the eyes of some observant people, this confirmed that King of Hell Chu had fallen from grace and was about to step down. And so in Iron Cloud Citadel, rumors and slanders began to spread. Some people who had always been afraid of danger were now jumping up and down. One day, after finishing his training, Chu Yang felt that he had reached level 8 martial master. Looking at Gu Duxing and the others who were still fighting fiercely, he could not help but think about something. You haven't gone out for a month, are you bored? Chu Yang smiled and asked, how about I treat you to a meal today? Where do you want to go? Or now is the right time to go to that place? Drink wine, drink wine. GMO cheered, his eyes shining. Find a few beautiful girls and talk about life. Chapter 205. Speaking of drinking wine with girls, I have never tried it before. Chu Yang coughed awkwardly and rubbed his nose. What does drinking wine with girls mean? Is it fun? Pretentious. The 4 of them spoke at the same time and made 4 disdainful gestures in front of Chu Yang. I really don't know. I have never experienced it before. Chu Yang said innocently. Boss, are you still a virgin? Jimo's eyes widened. Rui Butong and Luo Kudi laughed at the same time. Why don't we go see it today? Chu Yang rubbed his head and his eyes flashed. There was another place in Iron Cloud Citadel. Chu Yang was very interested, but he did not have any confidence. That place looked beautiful, but it could be said to be the most dangerous place in Iron Cloud Citadel. In lower 3 heavens, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a tiger's den. House of exceptional beauties. From time to time they sang and poured wine. Every night they danced to dispel all worries. Beautiful women, where do they go? The first House of Exceptional Beauties. Ever since House of Exceptional Beauties was established in Iron Cloud Citadel, whether it was war or dynasty, House of Exceptional Beauties never fell. In his previous life, after Golden Horse Riders Department captured Iron Cloud, the biggest loss they suffered was at House of Exceptional Beauties. House of Exceptional Beauties, as the name suggests, was a brothel. But this brothel was different from other brothels. The girls in this brothel sold their skills and not their bodies. Moreover, the price was very expensive. If one was not from a wealthy family, they did not have the qualifications to spend a night there. At that time when Iron Cloud Citadel fell, a few Golden Horse Riders went to House of Exceptional Beauties to have fun. They wanted the girls to sleep with them, but the people of House of Exceptional Beauties broke their limbs and threw them out. Then a large group went and was beaten until they crawled all over the floor. Later, Diwu Qingro personally came out to settle this matter. No one knew how it was handled, but House of Exceptional Beauties was still House of Exceptional Beauties. Obviously, it was no longer the case. With Diwu Qingro's power at that time, he chose to tolerate House of Exceptional Beauties. House of Exceptional Beauties' terror could be imagined. Chu Yang also did not know what House of Exceptional Beauties was, but he knew that it was definitely a huge monster. However, the House of Exceptional Beauties was clearly just a tool to amass wealth. It was to amass a large amount of wealth for a certain power. Other than that, there was nothing else to understand. However, just this episode alone was enough to make Chu Yang see him in a new light. Chu Yong had been wondering if he could pull the House of Exceptional Beauties over. If he could pull them over, his strength would definitely increase greatly. But House of Exceptional Beauties had been in Iron Cloud Citadel for so many years. How could Tai Butian and Tai Longcheng not know the value of House of Exceptional Beauties? If even they couldn't do anything, Chu Yong reckoned that he wouldn't be of much use even if he went there himself. On top of that, he had been extremely busy all this time. He was also afraid that he would provoke the House of Exceptional Beauties and end up making a fool of himself. Thus, Chu Yong had been suppressing it. Right now, the weather was cold and the ground was frozen. Iron Cloud Citadel was also very busy, while his own Butian Pavilion had nothing to do. Chu Yong wanted to go check out the situation. Naturally, bringing GMO and the others along was a way to relax as well as a great help. Chu Yong thought for a while and said, "You guys wait for me here for a while. I will go back to Butian Pavilion to take a look. If there is nothing else, we will go to House of Exceptional Beauties to play." House of Exceptional Beauties? Hearing these three words, GMO, Luo Kudi, and Rue Butong simultaneously became excited. Exceptional Beauties? Just how exceptional are they? Thinking about it, GMO and Luo Kudi looked at each other. Suddenly, a lustful smile appeared on their faces. Be careful, that place only sells their skills, not their bodies. Don't make a fool of yourself. Chu Yong warned them. That's more satisfying. What's the point of selling their bodies? Just thinking about it makes me sick. GMO laughed like a pervert. That's right, they don't sell their bodies. Gu Duxing coldly stood there and said, "House of Exceptional Beauties? Not interested." Humph, one in this world besides Sister Xiao Miao, what other exceptional beauties can there be? The four of them rolled their eyes. It seemed that in this guy's heart, other than Gu Miaoling, all the other women in the world were just dirt in his eyes. Let's go. Ayaya, what are we waiting for? We will go with you to Butian Pavilion. Then we will go to House of Exceptional Beauties. Luo Kadi impatiently said. This guy's face was red with excitement. His eyes shone with a thirsty light. I have been holding back for too long. As he spoke, he lowered his head and said with grievance, "Look, there is a bulge here," and sure enough, there was an eye-catching bulge in his crotch. Chu Yong scolded with a smile and kicked over. Luo Kadi nimbly dodged and used his hand to adjust the bulge. Using his underwear, it was not so obvious. He sighed and said, "Back in the days, this young master was also a romantic and happy man. Who knew that in the lower three heavens, I would be caught and sent to the desert after coming out of the sea? Damn it, I am about to explode." Noisily, the five of them rushed out. Gu Duxing originally did not want to go, but he was dragged out by GMO and Luo Kadi. The snow had stopped a few days ago, but the weather was still bitterly cold. The sky was filled with dark clouds. The thick snow did not seem to melt at all. Ever since Mo Qingwu left that day, Chu Yong had been feeling uneasy. During this period of time, he had been training beyond his limits, but it did not lessen his depression at all. But he could not say this out loud. If Gu Duxing and the others knew that he was lovesick for a little girl, they would probably despise him until he died. Calculating the time, Mo Qingwu should be home by now. Plus, the clan should already know, right? What would the Mo clan do? Chu Yong was a little worried. The thing he regretted the most was that Dong Wushang left so quickly that he did not have time to ask him to find out about Mo Qingwu. They arrived at Butian Pavilion with creaking sounds. Although the weather was cold, the entire Iron Cloud Citadel was still bustling. Only the place that was usually the busiest, Butian Pavilion, was now deserted. Most of the people were sent out by Chu Yong. At Butian Pavilion, only the new disciples were training. Wu Qianqian was overseeing the situation. Chang'ong and Chun Yutong were not there. No one knew where they went. What did you arrange for them to do? Wu Qianqian asked. This is a secret. Chu Yong said calmly, little girl, don't be so curious. Wu Qianqian was speechless. I am your senior sister. I have some matters to attend to these few days. If there is nothing going on at Butian Pavilion, do not disturb me. Chu Yong said casually. Who dares to disturb you? Wu Qianqian said angrily. Then she asked with concern. Your Highness. No, did His Majesty look for you? Why would he look for me? Does he want to marry his little sister to me? Chu Yong rolled his eyes. In your dreams. Wu Qianqian suddenly widened her eyes. He has a little sister? He doesn't have a little sister? Chu Yang was even more surprised than her. Where did he get a little sister? Wu Qianqian's black eyes widened. The entire Iron Cloud Nation knows that Your Highness is His Majesty's only surviving. Oh, Chu Yang said with relief. Then he hit her. Something is not right. Who is that? Chu Yang frowned and thought for a while. Then he slowly said, Iron Cloud's #1 beauty, but that... What kind of beauty is that? Boss, are you done yet? GMO yelled from outside the door. You are really something, talking about the house of exceptional beauties in front of beautiful women? What house of exceptional beauties? Wu Qianqian suddenly became alert. Iron Cloud Citadel's house of exceptional beauties. The sudden voice interrupted Chu Yang's thoughts. He casually said, I want to take them to the house of exceptional beauties to play. You want to take them to the house of exceptional beauties to play? Wu Qianqian's eyes widened. Her beautiful face slowly turned green. She suddenly roared. You are not allowed to go. Really? Chu Yang looked at her in astonishment and said, Unreasonable. What does us going to the house of exceptional beauties have to do with you? Wu Qianqian bit her lips. What about you? Chu Yang turned around and walked out. Go do your thing. Let's go. Wait. Wu Qianqian rushed out. I am going too. This sentence made Gu Dusheng, GMO Luo Kadi, and Miao Butong all turn pale with fright. You're going too? That is a brothel. A place for men to play, little girl. You are not allowed to go. Chu Yang said firmly. Taking beauties to a brothel? What is this? Besides, this is not a place for fun. I must go. Wu Qianqian did not budge an inch. Tell me. What can you do if you go? Chu Yang scratched his head in distress. Can you go play? Can you go whoring? Can you go, What? Anyway, I want to go. Wu Qianqian rarely expressed her determination. You want to go and have fun? No way. You stay here. Chu Yang said sternly. This is an order. I will resign immediately. I must go. Wu Qianqian said angrily. The two looked at each other like fighting cocks. Minister Chu was at his wits' end. Gu Dusheng, GMO, and the others looked at each other. Then they folded their arms and looked like they were watching a play. At this time the savior arrived. Chang'ong was holding some documents and hurriedly rushed in. Miss Wu, this matter. The minister is also here. That's great, this matter. What matter? Wu Qianqian asked subconsciously. I am going to the palace. Chu Yang came out with a whoosh. Wu Qianqian shouted, wait. She wanted to chase after him. Minister Chu bellowed, Chang'ong, I order you to stop her. If you let her out of this door today, I will hold you responsible. Finished speaking, he waved his hand and took Gu Dusheng and the others away. Oh, Miss Wu, Miss Wu, Miss Wu. Chang'ong stretched out his hand. Miss, please take pity on my old bones. Seeing that Wu Qianqian still wanted to chase after him, Chang'ong almost cried. Besides, the minister is going to the palace for official business. Chang'ong did not understand. What is going on? Why are you stopping him from going to the palace? Your palace is at the House of Exceptional Beauties? Wu Qianqian saw that Chu Yang had disappeared. She stomped her feet and said bitterly, he is going to the House of Exceptional Beauties to fool around. Chang'ong's eyes widened. The minister is going to visit prostitutes? What? Seeing that Wu Qianqian's eyes were about to turn red, Chang'ong hurriedly tried to persuade her. Going to the House of Exceptional Beauties is not a big deal. At most you can listen to some music. The House of Exceptional Beauties sells their skills and not their bodies. The confidant cursed. This minister is really something. With a 1 in a million beauty by his side, you still want to go to the House of Exceptional Beauties. Miss Wu's feelings for you, who in Butian Pavilion does not know. Selling my skills and not my body is not allowed. Wu Qianqian said angrily. Chapter 206. Chu Yang escaped in a sorry state. GMO and the others followed him out, laughing and laughing. I say, boss, this Miss Wu is really good looking. Luo Kadi clicked his tongue in admiration. This young master has seen countless women, but even in the upper 3 heavens, there are only a few who can compare to her. She's a top-grade beauty. Chu Yang's face darkened as he ran. Boss, I think this Miss Wu is quite interested in you. She actually doesn't allow you to fool around. GMO leaned over and said with shifty eyes, I think you two have an affair. What affair? Chu Yang said angrily. GMO shrank back in fear when he glared at him. Actually, this Miss Wu is not bad. Gu Duxing followed from the side and said lightly, she likes you a lot. We can all see this. If you can consider it. Chu Yang sighed. Even he himself didn't know when Wu Qianqian's impression of him changed. But what kind of person was Chu Yang? How could he not sense it? He had always been cold to this matter. This was something that he couldn't respond to. But he couldn't reject it even more. Because Wu Qianqian didn't make it clear, and always maintained the attitude of a silent bystander. She liked him in secret. Chu Yang couldn't do anything about it. I didn't say I liked you and I never showed it to you. Are you going to reject me if I like you in my heart? So Chu Yang could only pretend to be confused. Hearing Gu Duxing's words, Chu Yang sighed and said, how could I not know? But I'm not in the mood to talk about love. Why not? GMO leaned over again, talking about love while doing business while practicing martial arts. Isn't that great? Get lost. Chu Yang said angrily. One more word and you'll return my sword. GMO shrank back and didn't say anything. After hanging out with him for so long, this guy was getting more and more shameless. Only this sentence could threaten him now. If he said, one more word and I'll make you purple and red, maybe this guy will say, come on, I've been itching these days. You have someone in your heart? Gu Duxing asked thoughtfully. This was the only reason that could explain why Chu Yang was able to resist the pursuit of such a peerless and alluring beauty. Yes. Chu Yang nodded. Who is it? Gu Duxing's eyes widened. Have I seen him before? You must have seen it before. Chu Yang smiled mysteriously. I've seen it before? Gu Duxing was really confused this time. He began to think hard about the beauties he had seen before. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. He really couldn't remember. The problem was that no matter who it was, there was no such thing as a beauty in Gu Duxing's eyes. There were only two words, women. Yes, all women are the same. So what if I already have someone in my heart? Luo Kadi snorted and happily suggested, a real man having 3 wives and 4 concubines is the most normal thing. Even if your heart belongs to someone else and is completely occupied by one person, it will not affect the firmness of your lower body. Get lost. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing shouted at the same time. Then they kicked out together. Luo Kadi flew out as if he was riding a cloud. I can't think of anything. Gu Duxing frowned and maintained his kicking posture. Well then keep it to yourself. Chu Yang smiled strangely. He really didn't have the mood to talk about love right now. Mo Qingwu's matter was pressing on his heart for 2 generations. If Chu Yang and Wu Qian were to serve each other now, then Chu Yang's obsession after his rebirth would become as worthless as bubbles. How far is that house of exceptional beauties? Luo Kadi ran back covered in snow and tactfully changed the topic. Not far. With our speed, we'll be there in an hour. Chu Yang said seriously, however, there's something I need to tell you in advance. The background of House of Exceptional Beauties is extremely mysterious, but also extremely powerful. Don't think that just because you're from the 3 heavens, you can disdain House of Exceptional Beauties. I'm guessing that the background of House of Exceptional Beauties is definitely not weaker than your clans. Oh, Gu Duxing, GMO, Luo Kadi and Ji Butong all revealed interested expressions at the same time. They looked at each other and smiled thoughtfully. Fuck. Luo Kadi was shocked. This is House of Exceptional Beauties? Isn't this a little too grand? Not only him, even Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were a little shocked. It had been snowing for 4 consecutive days, but it did not melt at all. All of Ironcloud Citadel and even the Royal Palace had accumulated snow, but in this House of Exceptional Beauties, there was not a single speck of snow within a radius of a few hundred feet. It was clean and clean. In fact, the ground was very dry. Even the roof was clean and tidy. The only place with snow was in the garden. There were many trees that were not afraid of the cold. The snow contrasted with the green trees, creating a dreamy fairy tale feeling. 2 strings of red lanterns hung down from the roof. The surroundings would be covered in snow and ice, but only this place was dry and crisp. Under such a strong contrast, it was as if this place did not belong to the human world. There were constantly young men in embroidered clothes coming in and out. There were also some fat merchants dragging their heavy bellies as they walked in. This place is really lively. Luo Kudi's eyes lit up. He smelled the fragrance of cosmetics carried by the cold wind. His nose twitched as he said in an intoxicated manner, "Oh my God, it's as warm as spring. When I come here, I feel like a fish in water. Let's go in." Chu Yang was really surprised for a moment, but he quickly recovered. Just as he was about to go in, he suddenly felt that something was not right. He could not help but be startled. His ears perked up to listen, but he did not find anything. He immediately turned his head and looked at the path he came from. Then he followed Gu Duxing and the others in. More than 100 feet behind him, on top of a big pine tree, a green-clothed man silently appeared. His eyes were filled with dissatisfaction as he muttered, "This little bastard, he actually went to the brothel with his gang." Then he frowned and muttered, "Damn it, it was so hard to find him, but how could it be so? That piece of purple crystal jade essence, he did not seem to have it on him. Could it be that I really found the wrong person?" Thinking about this, the man in blue was very angry. He did not even see the person in question and was chased out by the old master. "You did not see the jade essence? If you did not see the jade essence, why the hell did you come back to report?" At that time, the old master raised his walking stick and almost broke his own spine. "Bastard! Tell me, what else can you do? You can't even find a person. There were hundreds of messages, and each time your big brother and sister-in-law could not wait to go, and each time your sister-in-law came back crying. Can't you do something that you are confident in?" Master, I suspect that this is definitely." "You suspect? You suspect your grandmother?" The old master roared, 135 times. "You said it was definitely the case every time. This time it is really too similar. Really, that expression, that face. You said the same thing the 135 times. Master, you scram. This time it is really scram. Still not scram. Fine. Seeing that the walking stick was about to hit him again, the man in blue covered his head and ran away. He only heard the old master roar, "If you can't find the real one, every time you come back, I will drown you in a cesspool." Thinking about this, the man in blue's face became bitter. After he came back with his report, he went straight to Ironcloud Citadel. He spent a few days searching the entire Ironcloud Citadel. It was not until Chu Yang left Heavenly Armament Pavilion this morning that he coincidentally found Chu Yang. Even with his speed and martial power, he was so tired that he almost fell down. There is still no news of the purple crystal. Did he also take the one I gave him? How could the man in blue give up? He dared to swear that the young man he had found this time was absolutely identical to his elder brother, even more so than the 135 from before. Plus, that expression was even more similar. Plus, his mouth was like sister-in-law's. Unfortunately, the clan was very busy this time. He could not see his big brother and sister-in-law. He did see his grandfather, but with his temper, it was better not to see him, sighed Green Flail. I hate this kind of place the most. The green-clothed man heaved a long sigh and flew over. The best thing to do now was to follow this young man and find out little by little. Of course, if he could find that piece of jade, that would be the best. Ayaya, you have not come for a long time. What a coincidence. Today is the big day of the House of Exceptional Beauties. Please, ladies, come and welcome our guests. Once Chu Yang and the others entered the door, they were immediately greeted by a fat woman in her 30s or 40s with heavy makeup. Her face was full of smiles. GMO retched and angrily said, "Isn't this the House of Exceptional Beauties? You call this a beauty? This is old amiable, you idiot." Gu Duxing looked at this self-proclaimed Master GMO, with a face full of astonishment. She was rather surprised by this fellow's fussing. GMO's face turned red and he said, "I thought old AI was also a beauty. Get lost, you bastard. Why would a beauty be an old dove?" Luo Kudi's nose was up in the air, and he was disdainful of GMO. The three of them sang the same tune as if there was no one else around. Hearing this, old AI's face turned red and then white. He was so ashamed that he could not show his face. At this time, 5 girls in white appeared from the door and said in unison, "Welcome, my 5 lords." Then, he walked up with a faint and amiable smile on his face. Each of them took one of the girls and accompanied them inside. When these 5 girls came out, even Chu Yang could not help but praise them. Not bad. These 5 girls were naturally not beauties, but each of them was delicate and pretty. Regardless of body shape or face, they were all top-notch. Their faces were lightly made up and their eyes were clear. They did not look like prostitutes. Chapter 207. At this moment, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing heard the sound of panting. It seemed to be a nervous kind. They turned their heads to look and did not know whether to laugh or cry. If it were not for their strong willpower, they would have burst out laughing while holding their bellies. The 2 men, GMO and Luo Kudi, who boasted that they had seen all kinds of flowers and had spent their entire lives with makeup, were held by the young girls beside them. Both of them had their heads held high, their chests puffed out, and their backs straightened. Their bodies were actually somewhat stiff. Although they tried hard to maintain a calm expression on their faces, one could faintly see that they were nervous, especially GMO. The tip of his nose was sweating. How was this the behavior of a man who had seen many flowers and was unrestrained? GMO, Gu Duxing called out. GMO did not hear anything. Since his arm was being held by the girl in white, he was completely at a loss. GMO. Gu Duxing raised his voice. Oh, I'm here. GMO regained his senses. How is this place compared to the ones you have seen? Gu Duxing held back his laughter. It's okay. Although it's not as good as. It's just so-so. GMO tried his best to put on an expert look. He blushed and said, "Back then when I was at home I didn't spend that day in this kind of place. This kind of small scene is simply not worth mentioning." GMO is a person who has seen many big scenes. How is he like us? We don't even know how to walk. Chu Yang said calmly. Haha. The girl holding GMO's arm could not help but laugh. She immediately knew that something was wrong. She hurriedly covered her mouth and rolled her eyes. The other girls also showed a smile on their faces. They were here every day. How could they not know? For people like GMO and Luo Kudi, they had never been here before, not to mention that they had been here for a long time. Only teenagers who visited a brothel for the first time would have this kind of behavior. Even if it was the second time, they would not be so nervous. This guy actually dared to boast shamelessly that when he was at home, he didn't spend a single day in a place like this. This kind of words, it was simply terrifying. Gu Duxing tried hard to hold back his laughter as he said, "So that's how it is. Since Master GMO is so familiar with this place, why don't you introduce it to us?" There's no need for an introduction. GMO acted as if he had a card up his sleeve. He lowered his voice and said, "When I bring you into the room, you just need to take off your pants." Haha. Gu Duxing gave him a thumbs up. "You're really something." He turned around and left, laughing wildly. Others might not know, but how could Gu Duxing not know? The word lust was the most taboo word in the 3 heavens. Especially these 2 dukes who were very talented in martial arts. Which clan didn't have high hopes for them? No matter what kind of martial arts it was, the premature release of one's primordial yang was an irreparable loss. It would also affect one's lifetime achievements. If these people didn't achieve much, then it basically meant that the future of the family wasn't very bright. Under such circumstances, GMO and the others wanted to visit a brothel? That was like a dream. If his family found out about this, it would be strange if he wasn't skinned alive. The so-called hedonistic sons were generally good-for-nothings in the family. But those who were important to the main family of the real big clans were definitely. They couldn't be hedonistic sons. Because of the strict requirements of the family, the strict rewards and punishments, and the terrible self-discipline that they had cultivated since childhood, they couldn't be hedonistic sons. There was a saying that big clans often produced hedonistic sons. Regarding this saying, Gu Duxing and Chu Yang snorted disdainfully. Hedonistic sons were only produced by some big clans, low-class clans without any foundation. If the heirs of those big clans really became hedonistic sons, then how could these clans stand tall for thousands of years? Wouldn't they have been destroyed long ago? The story of turning over a new leaf was suitable for ordinary people, but it definitely wasn't suitable for the heirs of big clans. because if they took one wrong step, they wouldn't be able to turn back for the rest of their lives. Even if they turned back, they would never be able to return to their original position. Therefore, they didn't believe that GMO and Luo Kadi were pretending to be brothel regulars. After entering, they found that there was actually a huge hall inside. In the middle of the hall there was a huge charcoal stove. The color of the charcoal inside was very bright, and the whole hall was as warm as spring. Bursts of loud chatter could be heard. At the end of the hall there was a platform 3 feet above the ground. The top of the platform was covered by a hazy curtain, allowing you to see inside but not clearly. Behind the curtain, there was a simple and unadorned zither. Inside there were already many people sitting, as if they were waiting for something. At the place closest to the stage there were actually 5 young men clustered around. The loud voices were coming from them. "This is a brothel?" Luo Kadi finally exclaimed in surprise. "A brothel is like this?" His voice was slightly louder, and everyone couldn't help but glare at him. At this time, a woman in her 30s leisurely came out and walked up to the high platform. Although this woman was slightly older, she was graceful and graceful. Her every move exuded a noble demeanor. In the hall, the voices were uniformly silent. "Everyone, we will now begin our routine for the day." This woman smiled sweetly, and her eyes were like flowing spring water. She looked at everyone in the hall and said, "As everyone knows, Miss Xiao Lu's zither skills are peerless, and she has the reputation of heavenly zither music. I wonder if everyone is interested in hearing it?" Yes. Everyone raised their arms and shouted. Moreover, Miss Xiao Lu is in a good mood today. She said that if anyone can successfully invite her out, and if they can solve 3 difficult musical problems, they can enter Miss Xiao Lu's room. Miss Xiao Lu will play a song for him alone, and they will have dinner together. Moreover, from then on, he will be an honored guest of the House of Exceptional Beauties. "Wow!" everyone exclaimed. Obviously, this condition was very tempting. "Who is this Miss Xiao Lu?" Gu Duxing's expression became cold, and he said, "She actually has such a big fight." GMO and Luo Kadi were angry at the same time. "You don't know Miss Xiao Lu?" Someone on the side mocked. "Then what are you doing here?" It was as if not knowing Miss Xiao Lu was too ignorant and inexperienced. Sure enough, everyone in the hall had a fanatical expression. Obviously, they were all here for Miss Xiao Lu. "Do you know about the Battle of the 3 Masters that occurs every 20 years in the Heaven Realm?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "Battle of the 3 Masters? The moon and lotus flowers are beautiful. The 3 Masters meet. Who will ascend the heavenly palace? Who will be the champion?" Chu Yang softly recited. "The flute immortal drifts on the water. The flute sage quietly travels on the boat. The sound of the zither gently descends from the heavens. The vicissitudes of life paint the spring and autumn. 20 years of wind and rain, who will not fall? 20 years of wind and frost, who will remain?" Originally, in the Heaven Realm there were masters. Each of them had their own unique musical skills, and they had reached the peak. I don't know when this person suddenly wanted to compete for the title of number 1 in the world, so they began to compete. At that time in Great Zhao's capital Lotus Lake, there were many spectators. After a round of competition, the 8 people were evenly matched, but the Shangju was defeated and withdrew, becoming one of the 8 masters. Masters are passed down from generation to generation, and the remaining 8 people were equally matched. Moreover, they had already reached the peak, and it was difficult for them to take another step forward. Therefore, they agreed to fight again 20 years later at this time and place. However, the opponent's younger brother would fight. 20 years later, there was another descendant who was not skilled enough and withdrew, becoming a master. Until now there are still 3 masters. That is, the flute, and the zither. Next year there will be another 20 years, and it will be time for the final battle of the 3 masters. The final number 1 in the world will be decided. And this Miss Xiao Lu is the only successor of the zither master. Chu Yang slowly said. Although it is only the flute, and the zither, and not martial arts, the fame and influence of the 3 masters in the world is enormous. It is estimated that next year, Great Zhao will have a headache for a long time. Chu Yang said this, and the corner of his mouth revealed a strange smile. Oh, but what does the vicissitudes of life paint the spring and autumn mean? Of course, it is the clan of the witnesses of the masters. Writing down the sentiments of each competition, Chu Yang slowly said, "So you came today, but you did not bring us to play." Gu Duxing smiled. He had guessed Chu Yang's intention in the first moment. The gathering of the three masters was a grand event in the world. If used well, it could give Di Wuqingro a splitting headache. How could Chu Yang miss such a great opportunity to cause trouble for Di Wuqingro? Chu Yang's arrival this time should be an extremely important hidden chess piece. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, "This zither master is Miss Xiao Lu. Ha ha ha." He smiled and did not continue. Such a grand event, how could Chu Yang not have heard of it in his previous life? He clearly remembered that in his previous life, the flute master was second, and the zither master was third. In other words, this Miss Xiao Lu was defeated. However, her defeat was not because her skills were not good enough. Instead, it was because her zither was suddenly stolen before the battle of the three absolute heavenly imperial court. The zither of the zither master could be said to be a priceless treasure. It was also the most valuable zither under the heavens. After losing her zither, how could she be in a good mood? And in such a short period of time, where could she find a suitable zither? Between two zither, how could they be the same? Thus, the zither master's defeat was logical. But after the zither was unwillingly defeated, the other two masters were killed at almost the same time. The two great clans also collapsed like ice. This case caused a huge uproar in the world, but in the end it was left unsettled. That was because no one knew who had done it. Only a few years later did Chu Yang realize that it must have been done by the power behind the zither master. This move was extremely ruthless, because they didn't know who instigated the theft of the zither, but it had to be one of the two families. There was definitely one innocent and the other deserved it. Without any evidence, they simply killed off the two clans. Clean and simple. This kind of method was extremely unreasonable, but it was also the most ruthless and effective method when there was no other way. But even after killing people, the zither was still not recovered. Thus, the masters of that year disappeared with the passing of time. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.